broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and scrutinise his policies. This is a Mayor's Question Time meeting of the Assembly, which means that all members are invited to attend and ask questions of the Mayor. Can I welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery and watching on the webcast? Oh, we have a few. In case of an emergency and any need to exit the building, guests seated in the public gallery should follow the security staff and Assembly members should follow the meeting clerk. Please may I remind you to silence your devices, and can I ask the Mayor and members to position your microphones so they can be heard clearly, moving it closer to you by picking it up from the base. That's for new members. Please do not pick up your microphone from the neck. It kind of breaks them. Members are also reminded to turn off any mobile hotspots for the duration of the meeting. As you will know, yesterday afternoon, the Prime Minister called a general election for Thursday, the 4th of July. Actually, technically, I think the King did, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind all elected members of their obligations under the use of resources rules, that they are not to be used for party political purposes. And I realise that many of today's questions may well relate to the potential for political change and how that may affect the London and the Mayor's plans. I would just ask the Mayor and members to ensure that their questions and answers do not tip into seeking to effect support for a political party or politician. Can I now ask the clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to confirm any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies for absence from Assembly Members Bailey, Assembly Member Lord Bailey and Assembly Member Moema.
Thank you. Since the last all-Assembly meeting at Mayor's Question Time on the 15th of March, the Transport Committee wrote to the Mayor on the taxi and private hire vehicle industry in London. The Police and Crime Committee published its report looking into how Met investigates serious injury collisions in London. The Planning and Regeneration Committee published a series of letters to the Mayor to help shape the next iteration of the London Plan. The Environment Committee wrote to the Mayor with recommendations on food and security and sustainability. The Cost of Living Working Group published its report following a year-long investigation into the impact of the cost of living. The Environment Committee wrote to the Mayor with recommendations for protecting and improving green spaces and infrastructure. The GLA Oversight Committee wrote to the Mayor regarding the Green Finance Fund. And the Transport Committee published its report looking at safety on the Transport for London network. The Planning and Regeneration Committee published an opinion piece on the 15-minute city concept, and the Police and Crime Committee held a confirmation hearing for the appointment for the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. As you can see, we've done a lot, as usual. Can I ask the Assembly to note the interest set out at item 2, and do any Assembly...
Before you move on, you seem to have missed a couple of things. We've got a number of new members sitting around the table, which we should welcome. But there's also been that little thing. I might understand why you've not mentioned it: a re-election of a mayor, along with the London Assembly, and we should note that the Mayor is on his third term of mayoralty.
I'm sure
it might have been
I'm sure there's
mentioned.
plenty of opportunity for members to raise that during the meeting, and I think I welcomed the new members at the annual meeting.
Indeed, he did.
I can't keep welcoming them. They'll get rather. They'll feel.
I think the issue for MQT, there'll be more members of the public watching this meeting than would have been at our AGM.
Well, welcome, congratulations. There you go. Can I?
You don't have to be churlish about it.
Do assembly members have any disclosable pecuniary interests which relate to the items on the agenda for today's meeting, or any other relevant interests, including any declarations in relation to gifts and hospitality, which are not reflected on the authority's register of gifts and hospitality? Small silence there, give people a chance. Thank you. Can I ask the Assembly to confirm the minutes of the London Assembly plenary meeting held on the 7th of March 2024 and the London Assembly Mayor's Question Time meeting held on the 15th of March 2024 to be signed by me as a correct record? Can I ask the Assembly to formally receive the Mayor's report covering the period from the 2nd of March to the 9th of May 2024? The Mayor will now provide an oral update of up to 5 minutes in length on matters occurring since the publications of his report. Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back, even though the Chair is not pleased to see me. It's good to see so many familiar faces and, of course, a few new ones as well. You're most welcome. Can I begin by offering, Chair, a warm welcome to all our new Assembly members and congratulate you all on being elected. In particular, I want to say a personal big well done to a couple of good friends of mine, Labour colleagues, Bassam Mahfouz and James Small-Edwards, whom I know share my desire to build a fairer, safer, greener London for everyone. I know you worked incredibly hard on your campaign, so it's brilliant to see you both taking your seats here in the City Hall chamber. Having the opportunity to represent and serve Londoners every day is a profound privilege. And I was truly humbled to be re-elected again as the Mayor of London with an increased margin of victory. This is the best job in the world, in the greatest city in the world. And I couldn't be more grateful to my fellow Londoners, not only for placing their faith in me once again, but for giving my administration such a strong record-breaking mandate to continue our work to improve Londoners' lives. The outcome of this latest mayoral election was clear. Londoners rejected deceit and division and instead voted for a positive vision for our city, one that is rooted in unity and taking practical action to give Londoners a vital helping hand to get on and fulfil their potential. I'm proud we've wasted no time in getting on with this work already, announcing an additional £14.5 million investment in our Violence Reduction Unit's flagship prevention programme and setting up plans to make London the best city in the world to grow up and be a byword for opportunity again. This third term is not about making history, but about shaping a better future for all. And now that the general election has been confirmed for July the 4th, we have a golden opportunity to turn the page on 14 years of Tory division and decline by ushering in an era of change and national renewal with Labour. A Labour government working hand in hand
Mr. Mayor,
with a
Mr.
Labour
Mayor,
mayor
if I can refer you
would be
back,
a game changer for
Mr. Mayor,
our
Mr.
city.
Mayor,
It would mean
Mr. Mayor,
we could go so
Mr.
much
Mayor,
further
please,
and accomplish so much more.
We'll
on
adjourn
behalf
the meeting
of our community.
for 5 Thank you. I'd like to ask our committee clerk, Rebecca Arnold, to repeat the position that I'd already stated at the start of this meeting with regard to use of resources.
Thank you, Chair. So, members will be aware that there's a use of resources rules document, and it's very long, and I won't attempt to either read it in full or summarise it in full at this point, but the Chair's asked me to summarise a couple of points. So there are specific rules that apply during a pre-election period. We're not in a pre-election period, and then there are some rules that apply at all times. One of the rules that the Chair was referring to earlier was that a rule that applies at all times is to ensure that GLA resources aren't used for party political purposes. The Chair referred earlier to the fact that many questions may quite properly relate to the potential for political change and how that change may affect London and the Mayor's plans. And the Chair mentioned in his comments earlier that he was asking the Mayor and members to ensure that their questions and answers do not tip into seeking to affect support for a particular political party or politician.
That being said, Mr. Mayor, would you like to continue, please?
I'm looking forward to answering the questions later on this morning. I hope you can show a bit more class during the course of this meeting.
Class wars start early. If we can now move to the questions on the priority order paper, each group is allocated an amount of time to ask their questions that is proportionate to their size. The first question concerns water pollution in London from Assembly Member Bakari.
Good morning. The regular release of untreated sewage into our rivers by water companies is a scandal, and it cannot continue. Neither I, the GLA or boroughs have any powers over sewer discharge in our waterways. I've written again to the Thames Water Chief Executive, and my team have met with him to be absolutely clear that continued inaction will not be tolerated. London's rivers are the arteries of our city, and Londoners deserve action to clean them up. The target the member refers to is a Thames water commitment set out in their pollution incident reduction plan. It's not correct to suggest it's a commitment I've made as Mayor. The Thames Water 2025 targets were monitored by the GLA over a 2-year period. Thames Water reported that around £1.3 billion of investment had been made in London from April 2020 to September 2022. But despite this investment and their commitment to improvements, pollution incidents didn't decrease, they actually increased. Thames Water's most recent River Health report, published last month, showed that there were a similar number of pollution incidents in 2023 as 2022. This is an appalling and unacceptable situation. It's obvious Thames Water needs to do much more to turn their record around and start taking proper care of our waterways. The body responsible for regulation for the privatised water and sewage industry is Ofwat. It's Ofwat's job to hold Thames Water to account. Earlier this year, I called on ministers to stop turning a blind eye to the pollution in our rivers, demanding they introduce tougher penalties for water companies that pollute. In the absence of national government action, I'm launching an ambitious plan to make rivers in London swimmable within a decade, cleaning our rivers for nature and in turn opening up more swimmable open spaces for Londoners where suitable and safe. While I don't have the power or resources to rectify this dire situation on my own, I've asked my officers to start working on a collaborative plan to drive forward action in this area, marking out the work needed over the coming years to clean our waterways and restore river health and water quality, whilst also taking short-term wins where we can.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it sounds like that the target of 2025 is not going to be met because of many reasons that you've just laid out. But the government have had a shocking record on sewage in our rivers. But considering your limited powers, as you've just said, you did make a commitment in your manifesto with very little detail to make London's water swimmable within 10 years. So what specific actions have you got in place to make rivers swimmable? How are you going to monitor the progress? And will you swim in the Thames once it's clean and safe?
Well, colleagues can already take advantage of swimming in the Thames outside City Hall in the Royal Docks. As I said in the answer to my question, I've asked colleagues in City Hall to draw up how we can work together, working with the fantastic environmental campaigners, working with boroughs, working with the government, Environment Agency, Ofwat and others to do what we can to make the river swimmable. We already know the progress we've made in relation to the difference BVs in London makes in relation to building dams, river reeds in relation to reducing pollution and other policies as well. We'll be setting out how we're going to get to a cleaner river. The good news is we've shown in the past that we can clean the air, and I'm sure we can make progress in cleaning the river as well.
I mean, you've talked again about the lack of powers. Now, Copenhagen and Paris have greatly improved their waterways because they have devolved powers for water supply and sanitation. So will you support and lobby the next government to implement such a model?
Of course, we're going to lobby the next government to devolve more powers and resources to London. That includes in all areas. One of the frustrations we have, of course, is Thames Water are responsible for a lot of the problems that we're trying to seek to address. So we want to obviously fix the problem at source in relation to the problems Thames Water is having. And like you said, there's a separate issue about cleaning up the river as well. We want to do both. What we don't want to do is a situation where on the one hand, we've got a great plan and we're making progress cleaning up the river, but there's still sewage being discharged into the River Thames and other rivers across our great city.
Okay, well, the major contributing factor to water pollution actually across London is missed connections, where plumbing connects to surface runoff sewers instead of wastewater sewers. And there's currently 943 identified misconnections in London, but some boroughs perform better than others in identifying those misconnections and forcing action. Will you use your convening powers to ensure best practices on tackling misconnections are being shared throughout London?
Yes, particularly an issue in and out of London, less so in central London, but we are trying to make sure that Thames Water understand the consequences of doing so. You're spot on to recognise this as one of the factors which can be rectified.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Lots still to do to make sure that our rivers are clean, but I'm sure that if we are pushing for more devolved powers from your perspective, I think that we'll be able to see some progress there. And I'd like to see a comparative way of the way we're working in Paris and Copenhagen here in London too. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Thank you. You'll probably have noticed that Assembly Member Bakari rather delightfully asked my question as it was listed, which related to the plans for swimming in the next 10 years. And you've covered off some of the things that I wanted to ask about in your answer to her. I just wondered if you could talk a bit about whether or not you think the Environment Agency, which has been stripped of money and staffing, needs to be beefed up to actually address some of the issues that relate to the activity or indeed the inactivity of the water companies.
Thank you for your question and your action in this area. Look, I think Ofwat, as I said in my answer to the question from Senator Bakari, are the body in charge of the regulation of the privatised water companies. I think they've dropped the ball in relation to holding the water companies to account. There's a separate issue in relation to the powers they have or lack of powers they have, the lack of teeth Ofwat have, the lack of action from the Environment Agency, the missing in action of DEFRA ministers in relation to this issue. I think they do need more powers. I think also there's a discussion about the additional investment that's required. I think it's wrong for Thames Water to increase customers' bills to pay for investment they should be paying for themselves, particularly when you know their shareholders in the past have received record dividends and record amounts of money have been taken out of Thames Water and huge debt leveraged against Thames Water. That's why I think Ofwat decided not to accept the first business plan Thames Water put forward. My understanding is the 12th of June deadline may now be missed as well because Ofwat aren't happy with what Thames Water are proposing.
Yes, I think Thames Water are a bit like the Manchester United of the football companies, of the water companies, with having been piled up with massive debts. And of course, the Glazers have managed to make some money out of Man U, even though they've piled it with debt. Do you think that there is a terminal nature to the problems with Thames Water. I mean, Kemble has, seems to be in a serious situation. And on the 17th of May, just this week, we've heard that the biggest investor has just slashed the value of their investment in Thames Water to zero, which implies that they think the situation is potentially terminal. Are we moving back towards seeing potentially the government needing to renationalise the water companies, or at least Thames Water?
Yeah, it's just worth reminding ourselves, when Thames Water was privatised in 1989, there was zero debt.
That's right.
You look at the amount of debt now, and it's eye-watering, the amount of debt leveraged by the previous owners, but also I understand the current owners have some responsibility in relation to the leverage of debt that's been piled into Thames Water. My understanding is that the Ofwat dismissed the previous plan from the parent company, which meant they withdrew their proposed cash injection. There's a further plan, 12th of June was the deadline, which may be rejected. I think this may be an example of nationalisation by default. What I don't want is taxpayers' money being paid for in relation to the private company being given monies and receipts they don't deserve. That's why I'm nervous about nationalising Thames Water, but I think that may be where we end up, like we have with some of the failed privatised train operating companies, because they're not fit for purpose in relation to running these public utilities.
I think it's going to be hard for the people who've invested in Thames Water, if they've decided their stake is worth nothing, to then argue that if it's renationalised that they should get any money for something they've already said is worth nothing.
Quite.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Polanski, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Congratulations on your re-election and welcome back. Just before I get into the matter on hand, I just want to say, as a Jewish Londoner and a Jewish politician to a Muslim Londoner and a Muslim politician, thank you for your solidarity during the campaign and keeping our communities together. I appreciate that, and I know Londoners do too. On the matter in hand, during the election, you said that you will demand action from Thames Water. You've just said they're getting things wrong and that they need to do much more. What does demanding action specifically mean?
Well, thanks for your question and for your generous comments. So we've already met Thames Water a number of times, the previous chief executive, the one before her, and the current chief executive as well. I think, being generous, the chief executive's hands are tied to an extent by, I think Leonie Cooper referred to the parent company and what they're willing and not willing to do. And we're also working closely with Ofwat. So by holding them to account, it's not just simply in relation to the issues we've discussed in the past, flash flooding that could have been prevented by better action from Thames Water. There's the issue we're discussing this morning, the pollution in our rivers. A separate issue in relation to their lack of forward plan in relation to the reservoir that we know is needed in Oxford in relation to future plans for water supply in London, and I could go on. So it's making sure they've got a holistic approach to all these various issues that we know are coming, at the same time as making sure they provide value for money. Leaks in Victorian pipes shouldn't be happening with the technology that we know exists, that is used by the companies across the country, and I could go on. So unfortunately, because of the lack of statutory powers, it is convening those conversations, holding to account, and to give the Thames Water team some credit. When we've convened roundtables to discuss surface flooding, when we've discussed with other partners what we can do to address the issues of climate change, Thames Water have been active participants. The problem is they've not, I say this in a courteous way, put their money where their mouth is in relation to investing in a lot of these issues. And that's why Ofwat have a key role to play as the regulator, as indeed does the government through the Environment Agency, us playing tag. In other issues, we play tag with the government when somebody's not, doing a proper job, and I'm hoping we can do that again with Thames Water.
This might be the quickest the manifesto pledge has ever changed. So you've gone from demanding action to Thames Water to convening powers. Those feel very different.
No, it's when you've convened, you demand action. You can't, unless they get into the room by convening.
Okay, so it's demanding action once you've convened. Yeah. So you won't know what action you're going to take until you convene. But I'm sure Londoners and myself could tell you what action we want from Thames Water.
As indeed I could. There's a list of demands we've had. Many of them have been...
let me give an example. The bill increase of 53%. Are you going to tolerate that?
Sorry?
The bill increase of 53%. Are you going to tolerate that?
That's one of the reasons why I have rejected the business plan being the 12th of June, because it's not acceptable that Londoners pay the price of failure of Thames Water. And that's why Ofwat, the regulator, having spoken to us, have said that your business plan for the 12th of June is not going to be acceptable, which is why that's going to be kicked down the road for them to come up with a business plan that can be acceptable.
Right, and we've discussed today that when Thames Water was sold, it was given £0 debt. It now has immense debt. You sound cautious about nationalisation. Why?
Well, I don't want taxpayers to be bailing out this failed privatised company. I don't see why hard-working taxpayers who are paying the exorbitant increases in their bills should also be bailing out Thames Water, because there needs to be financial remuneration in relation to nationalisation, and that's why it's really important that we use taxpayers' money in a sensible way.
Would you agree it's in the government's power and a future Prime Minister's power to make sure when nationalising Thames Water, none of that money goes to shareholders and none of it is taken from taxpayers?
Well, I'm sure a future government would take proper legal advice. What nobody wants to happen is litigation, which leads to not just taxpayers' money being spent on legal fees, but then taxpayers' money potentially being spent in compensation as well. It's really important we realise that across the country there are decent water companies who have been privatised doing a decent job. Thames Water is clearly failing.
You were just re-elected as Mayor of London. You're not a random commentator. You're not the person giving legal advice. You have a very clear platform to say to a future government, we should renationalise Thames Water and taxpayers should not pay a penny of money. Will you do that?
Well, unlike you, I'm not the deputy leader of my party. I use Mayor's question time to answer questions about powers I do have. Where I haven't got powers, I try and use my convenient powers, and the bully pulpit where I can, I'll carry on doing that. But I think it's right and proper that Thames Water are held to account, if not by the government, through the DEFRA and the Environment Agency, by Ofwat and by the Mayor and others across London. We've got 75, we'll have 75 MPs after the general election, 73 now. I'm sure they join with me in demanding more from Thames Water.
You just spent a whole election saying the game changer will be a Labour mayor with a Labour government. You said that will be the wind in your sails. There's lots of comments like that. At no point did you say, if I'm the Mayor of London, I won't have the powers to speak my mind. You do have the powers to speak your mind. You have a microphone in front of you now. You could say, I want to commit, or I want the future Labour government to commit to renationalising Thames Water.
I'm quite clear in relation to Thames Water needing to improve their game. I'm quite clear in relation to any government, this or a future one, giving Ofwat more powers and more teeth. It's really important, not just in relation to water, in relation to other essential services, the trains being another example, that we held those privatised companies to account, and I'm really looking forward to. We've got to be careful, the chair might throw you out. A Labour government, a Labour government is in that sort of mood today. A Labour government working with the Labour Mayor to bring about transformation in our city.
Still don't feel like I've had a clear answer. Would you like a future government, whatever colour it is, to renationalise Thames Water without a penny of taxpayers' money?
Well, I think I said an answer to the question from Leona Cooper. I think we may be heading that way because of the failure of...
Would you like to head that way, and would you like future parties to commit to heading that way?
I'm quite clear. I don't like taxpayers' money being spent on things that need not happen, particularly bailing out...
I think it's this kind of thing that people can't stand from politicians, and I do congratulate you on your re-election, but I hope that things will improve after the general election, because people are sick of politicians who don't stick to commitments and don't speak their mind. I'm out of time, but thank you very much.
To paraphrase, things can only get better.
Thank you. Just before I move on, that line of questioning was fine because it didn't use a platform to tell Londoners to vote one way or another. And that line of questioning was absolutely fine.
So where was the Mayor wrong then?
We'll return to that because there was a clear promotion of a particular party. So we'll now move on to Assembly Member Ahmed.
Thank you for your question. This Tory government's disastrous economic policies have made Britain poorer and widened inequality. While London has proved more resilient than other parts of the UK, the cost of living crisis following Brexit and COVID has made recent years incredibly difficult for Londoners. As a world-leading global city, London is the engine of the UK economy and our greatest asset in getting the UK back on track to being a more prosperous country. That's why I've committed to set out an exciting new London growth plan to be developed in close collaboration with councils, businesses and trade unions. This new growth plan will set out how we can boost jobs and growth in well-established sectors of our economy, like finance, tourism and the built environment. And also champion some of the fastest growing sectors like life sciences, digital and AI, creative industries, and climate tech. As part of this plan, I've set a target of helping to create more than 150,000 good jobs by 2028 by connecting young Londoners from low-income households with these opportunities. I've identified a wide range of levers to help unlock growth, including building more council and affordable homes, ensuring Londoners have access to skills training, introducing a second Superloop in Outer London, and ensuring London's small businesses have access to the support they need through Grow London Local, my single front door for small businesses support in the capital. And also easing some of the burden on London households and families by making universal free school meals permanent, freezing and keeping TfL fares as low as possible, championing the London living wage, and helping Londoners to access the benefits they're entitled to. But we can't take London's continued economic success for granted. Maintaining it will require a concerted effort between London and national government to recognise and address barriers to growth. The current government seems to want to work against London, so I'm looking forward to the prospect and the possibility of a new Labour government that will support our capital city. I'll work in partnership with any government to deliver the affordable homes and transport services that Londoners deserve and secure the economic growth our country needs.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and could I congratulate you on behalf of my constituents in Lambeth and Southwark on your historic third term and massive majority. Mr Mayor, you've raised the issue of the cost of living crisis, the dreadful cost of living crisis that Londoners have had to endure now for a number of years. And it was a major issue in your re-election and will be a major issue over the next few weeks. Yesterday, the inflation figures came out and they are still significantly above target for the government. Prices are still going up and the price of food and essentials are still higher than they have ever been. Mr Mayor, could you tell us, you talked about how you would like to work with a future government and how awful the previous and anti-London this previous government is. What would you like to see central government doing to help you go further in helping Londoners with the cost of living crisis?
Thanks for your comments and your questions. Examples of things the government could be doing in relation to working with us to address the cost of living crisis is to ensure we get good growth so people can see the benefits of their work. If you're a business owner, you can see the benefits of more customers, more profits. We'd see the benefits in relation to increased corporation tax, increased tax being paid by new people being taken on. Another example of the difference a new government could make is investing in council homes. We've had to, really lobby to persuade this government to give us any investment for London. We need more investment to build those genuinely affordable homes Londoners need. A council home means you know the rent you're going to pay, you have security of tenure, and the rent doesn't go up every 12 months like it does in the private sector as well. A big thing we've got to do is invest in infrastructure. We've got lots of brownfield land in London to release that for housing. We need more powers to assemble land. But also we need to make sure there's good infrastructure going to that land, transport being a big driver for those homes that we need investment for. A really big thing the government could do is not continually, as this government's done for the last 14 years, particularly the last 8 years, is put obstacles in our way. London Plan, calling it in before an election, keeping it on hold for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, then agreeing to it, which leads to dither and the delay leads to action not being taken by developers. So lots of examples we've got of things the government can do. The biggest one is understanding that they shouldn't be cutting their nose to spite their face. Being in favour of London, being supportive of the Mayor of London, it does not need to come at the detriment of other parts of the country. And I'm looking forward to a change of government on July the 4th so we can get going with the growth our city needs.
Absolutely, and as you said, things can only get better.
Thank you. Next question concerns a change of approach by Assembly Member Garrett. I do apologise. Assembly Member Best. Sorry.
Thank you. Morning, Mr Mayor. You've committed to funding free school meals for the next 4 years. Could you let me know which budget that will come from?
What we'll be doing is, as we do normally, and this, is when it comes to the budget setting, that's when we set out the expenditure for the next year. I've set out the expenditure in relation to the next year in the budget we set recently. And when it comes to the future 4 years, we'll be setting out in the budget setting process where the monies for various expenditure are coming from, including for universal free school meals.
But you've committed to doing it for the next 4 years, so clearly you've got the money to do it, and it's a big commitment. It's £500 million, so surely you must know how you were funding that. Because the question I have is that you've previously said you couldn't commit beyond a year-by-year basis. So I'm confused as to how you now suddenly know you can commit to 4 years. So you must have a plan to fund it.
So the previous £275 million we found through business rates. I'm quite clear in relation to the next 4 years. I'm committed to it, and as I've done with other priorities over the last 8 years, we find the monies for those priorities when it comes to the budget setting process, as we'll do in due course.
So how will you find the money? Because obviously the way in which it's been funded before has been through reserves, or it's been through getting larger than expected business rates. Those aren't the kinds of things you can just commit to expecting or knowing that you're going to get, but you've told Londoners that they will have this for the next 4 years. So you must have a plan as to how you were going to fund it. You've previously said that you can't commit to things in perpetuity when I've not got a recurring source of income. So I'm afraid the bad news is that I can't say to Londoners I'll be providing universal free school meals in perpetuity. But you have said that now. You've said you're going to do it for the next 4 years. So in order to make that commitment and that promise to Londoners, you must have a plan. So could you let us know the plan?
Well, I'm not in May 2024 going to set up my budgets for 26, 27 and 28. What I'll be doing is, as I normally do, in the budget setting process, set out the plans when we publish our documents and the budget guidance and so forth.
So will it be coming from reserves? Will it be coming from business rates retention, which are larger than expected? Because you know the formula is also changing on that, so you know these things are occurring. You must have a plan, and to say I simply don't have a plan, you know that's not the truth.
That's not what I said. What I said is we'll be setting our budget plans when we publish our budget later on this year.
If you could say in your election manifesto that you're going to do it for the next 4 years, you could have given schools and parents that reassurance from day one, and you kept saying you couldn't do it, but you delayed and you delayed and you delayed so that you could announce it as close to the election as possible. That is cynical, because you're now saying you can happily commit for the next 4 years, whereas when we had this conversation last summer, you were saying you couldn't even commit for another year. It's cynical.
Well, that's not the view of Londoners on May the 2nd.
But they were expecting you to have a plan. I think they'd be surprised to hear today that you don't have a plan to fund it. That was on the basis of you telling them that you had a funding pledge and you were going to commit to it, and you're telling me today you don't know how you're funding it.
That's really not what I said, Chair. What I said is...
Then how are you funding it?
What I said, Chair, is we publish details of the budget during the course of the year when those budgets are published, and I'll be doing that again for next year.
So can we have a clue? You must be looking at certain pots of money and thinking that's where it's going to come from.
Well, Chair, I'm surprised that the member doesn't realise that during the course of the year we're publishing the budget guidance, we're publishing the draft budget, the consolidated budget, and later on during the course of the year we'll be publishing details of 25-26.
I think it's quite clear the Mayor doesn't have a clue or a plan. Thank you.
Assembly Member Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Now, well, you know that on a national level we have the highest tax burden since the war, and here in London, year on year, you've increased your share of the council tax by inflation-busting amounts. So, do you accept that your administration has played a part in a cost of government crisis?
Welcome to the Assembly, genuinely. So you'll be aware that in the last period, what the central government has done is shunted the costs that were previously paid by central government to regional and local government. I'll give you an example. When it comes to the funding of the police in London, in the year I became Mayor, roughly speaking, 19% of the funding came from City Hall. Because of more than £1 billion of cuts from central government, we've had to fill the massive black hole where we can from regional government by every year having the police precept to the maximum allowed. Had we not done that, we'd have been punished by the government in subsequent years. So in the first year that I was Mayor, because the previous Mayor didn't increase the police precept to the maximum amount, we received a cut from central government in relation to the Met Police budget. The same applies to the London Fire Brigade, and the same applies to Transport for London as well. So we're required by central government to increase council tax precept to the maximum we're allowed to do. I think council tax are regressive. I think the tenor of your question is right. You're making the poorest Londoners pay a regressive tax higher than they otherwise should because of a paucity of funding from central government. I also think you're right that in the last 14 years we've seen massive increases from taxes from central government without seeing the benefits in improved public services. That's one of the reasons why growth is so important. If we get growth and a bigger economy, we can see more investment in public services, and I'm confident that Rachel Reeves will be a great Chancellor should she be elected on July the 4th.
Thank you. The next question, and apologies to Assembly Member Best for missing you earlier. The next question concerns a change of approach from Assembly Member Garrett, please.
Thank you, Chair. This mayoral term presents a moment of maximum opportunity. The chance after the general election to work with the government that wants to support our city as opposed to being actively hostile to it. I'll be doing everything in my power to take advantage of that opportunity. During the COVID pandemic, we demonstrated the importance of not only building partnerships across London, but using those partnerships to galvanise action. We set up the Recovery Board to deal with the challenges facing our city. This led to the creation of the London Anchor Institutions Network, the largest community wealth building programme of any major city in the world. That project has been more successful than we could have ever anticipated, and we've now seen over 1.75 billion of procurement spend redirected to small and medium-sized businesses in London. That kind of change was only possible because we adapted our approach to changing circumstances, focusing on building deep partnerships across our city. The challenge now is to use those partnerships and get them set up to work with a new government. I'm genuinely excited about what could be possible if the London system unites and works together with a national government that actually wants to work with us. A key focus will be the launch of the London Growth Plan. Working together with businesses and other partners, we've made great strides for our economy, helping to create 330,000 jobs since 2016. And with the new London Growth Plan, we'll help create a further 150,000 good jobs by 2028. We've made a big difference for the better in London, rowing against the tide of national government. We could achieve much more with the winds of a supportive government at our back. In the mayoral election, 3 weeks to the day today, London has voted for my positive offer, rejecting the alternative by a record margin. With our renewed mandate, we will deliver on a whole range of ambitious, wider commitments to Londoners, including making permanent universal free school meals for state primary school children, keeping TfL fares as low as possible, 40,000 new council homes, 250,000 positive opportunities for young Londoners, redoubling efforts to tackle violence against women and girls, an end to rough sleeping by 2030, a new deal for renters, and further world-leading action to tackle air pollution and the climate crisis. So while adapting to new circumstances, I'll press on and deliver for Londoners.
So one of the difficulties you'll have, I'm sure, be aware of that my constituencies have been having is with the London Tram over the last little period. And without delving into the precise causes of every single one of those, I'm sure you're aware that the rolling stock for the London Tram is basically end of life. It needs renewing during this term. So is that going to be a priority for you? Funding, it's about 50 million quid, we think, funding the replacement rolling stock for the Croydon Tram.
Yeah, can I apologise through you to your constituents who've suffered an awful surface in the last few weeks? You'll be aware of the causes with the debris in the wheels and so forth. I met with the Commissioner this week. You're right as well to remind me that rolling stock needs to be changed, and TfL are committed to changing that rolling stock, committed to doing that in this parliamentary term, in this mayoral term.
Okay, so we can look forward to some shiny new trams rolling through Croydon, you think, before the end of this mayoral term?
You'll be aware, I'm not sure if your constituents are aware, that they're made to order, so we can't buy them off the shelf, and so the key thing...
big shelf.
Sorry?
Have to be a big shelf.
No, but they're actually made for... so you can't buy the trams. For example, Nottingham has trams. We couldn't buy the trams for Nottingham, but the order goes in as soon as possible, which means your constituents can look forward to new trams sooner rather than later. And can I reassure you, the lessons are being learned in relation to why those wheels are damaged the way they were from the debris and stuff. That's really important, those lessons are learned.
Great, I look forward to that. Separately, you did mention in your new approach was Solar Together, which is something where perhaps I was hoping for a new approach. Not to rehearse all of the discussions we've had about that before, I still have an example, for example, of Dr. Woods, one of my constituents, who, in attempting to do the right thing, ordered solar panels through that, was reassured by the fact that, effectively your rubber stamp was there on the quality of the work that would be done. Work was not done. He's left effectively a couple of £1,000s out of pocket to get the solar panel system that he thought he was going to have, and he's been given a sort of deadline and a full and final offer relating to that, which he feels quite aggrieved by. Is that something you'd be willing to put in the context of City Hall's budget, a very small amount of money, to make those people good to the system that they had actually paid for?
Yeah, can I... I've got to be careful what I say in a public forum for obvious reasons. Can I ask you to speak to me after the meeting? We'll look at what we can do in relation to Dr. Woods. And separately, just to reassure you, lessons have been learned in relation to what we do with contractors, subcontractors, and so forth. But can I speak to you offline? Because
it's an individual situation. I'd be happy to. Dr. Wood, sorry, not Dr. Woods. I'd be very happy to do that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. Morning, Mr. Mayor. You have said, and I'm talking about stop and search here, you famously have always said that you do everything in your power to cut the use of stop and search. Now, will you support your Commissioner, who is now saying that he wishes to increase stop and search?
Well, can I take the question from the Assembly member? Look, I'm quite clear. Stop and search is a valuable tool for the police. It should be intelligence-led and based upon the evidence, and I fully support the Commissioner and the police in relation to the intelligence-led use of stop and search. I've seen the fruits of well-used stop and search, from knives being taken off our streets, offensive weapons, drugs and so forth. It should be intelligence-led. What shouldn't be happening is politicians dictating to the police when they can and can't use stop and search. So, for example, a politician saying there should be a massive increase in stop and search because we've not got the evidence. It's the individual police officers on the ground that have the evidence to decide whether to stop and search.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you were saying that you do everything in your power to cut its use. And on that particular subject, I think you've been very successful because it's dropped by 44%. And of course, we now know that knife crime is up 49%. So will you support your Commissioner in trying to increase it, since you wanted to make sure that the previous Commissioner, as well as this one, I assume, did everything that they could to cut its use? You can't have it both ways, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think these were some of the arguments rehearsed in the mayoral campaign, and we see how that turned out. Look, the Met Police Service, on a per capita basis, of the 43 police forces, uses stop and search the second most in the country. I think only Merseyside, on a per capita basis, uses stop and search more than the Met Police Service. The Met Police Service officers, understand the law, whether it's PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, or other piece of legislation. They know when they can use stop and search and when they can't, and I'll carry on supporting the lawful use of stop and search and the proportionate use of stop and search. It has taken dangerous weapons off our streets, and undoubtedly has saved lives by taking those knives and guns off our streets.
It has. So are you quite appalled that it's so low at the moment?
Well, you can't sit in either the Home Office or City Hall and draw a conclusion on the use of stop and search when the police are telling us they're using the law's justification to stop and search. The inference from saying so is you think the police are misapplying the law. If that's the assertion, I think you should say so.
Well, you know full well I'm not saying that. I'm a massive supporter of stop and search. I think we should get knives off our streets. I was appalled that you used to say you'd do everything in your power to make sure it was cut. Obviously, you didn't understand in those days. What you're saying now is that you don't have any influence. If you do have any influence, then I would suggest that you absolutely support your Commissioner and make sure that stop and search increases. That is your job. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns Action for London private renters, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Garbett.
Can I welcome the member to the Assembly? I'm looking forward to working with you over the next few years. Can I also take the opportunity to wish Sean Berry all the best in the future, work very closely over the last 8 years. Londoners are more likely to rent privately than people anywhere else in the country, and also bear the most expensive rents. It cannot be right that Londoners are being priced out of our city, but this is the risk we face when the average advertised rental price is now more than double the level seen in some other regions in the UK. I've consistently lobbied for both a rent freeze and to be given the power to introduce rent controls in London. Under the current devolution settlement for London, rent control is in the government's gift, not mine, but I'm not prepared to wait any longer for the government to take action, which is why I'm focusing on using the limited powers I do have to stand up for renters across London. To directly address this issue, we will build 6,000 new rent control homes with rents capped and linked to the income of key workers, provided much needed relief for Londoners. The other side of the solution is supply. London's struggling private renters need more affordable homes. In London, we defied expectation to smash the government's target of building 116,000 new genuinely affordable homes, trebling delivery from the level inherited from the previous mayor. This is in stark contrast with government ministers who missed their national target by thousands of homes outside London. In my first 2 terms, I ushered in a new golden era of council house building, with more new council homes started in 22-23 than at any time since the 1970s, and double the number in the rest of England combined. Building on this progress, I'll work with councils to build at least 40,000 new council homes by 2030. I'll continue to make the case for the government to scrap Section 21 no-fault eviction without delay. It's shocking that the Secretary of State has capitulated to Conservative backbenchers and watered down the Renters Reform Bill, which now will be lost because of Parliament being prorogued next week. I'll also work with a potential new Labour government to deliver a new deal for renters, supporting councils to make use of their licensing powers, cracking down on poorly performing landlords, and helping renters enforce their rights and hold their landlords to account.
Thank you, and congratulations on your election. I enjoyed our time during the debate, and I'm looking forward to holding you account in this chamber. But I am disappointed to not hear a rent commission in your answer, something that you committed to in your blueprint for renters back in 2019. And we both heard from Londoners during the campaign just how desperately they need cheaper rents. We've discussed this, and we both really agree on rent controls, and it's a key ask of the London Renters Union, as well as supported by Londoners in a YouGov poll that Sian Berry commissioned that said 69% of Londoners want rent controls. 3 million people live in private rented accommodation. We've seen rents increase across the country by 9% year on year, and 40% of Londoners are struggling to afford rent. The Rent Commission I propose doesn't require you to wait for the government powers. You can just bring the renters together to have a really good discussion about what's needed. So I'm asking you today if you'll commit as a priority action in your 3rd term to a private rent commission.
Well, can I first agree with you? This was the #1 issue raised by Londoners during the campaign, the housing crisis in our city, and you'll be aware of the record numbers of people renting privately. I think it's 2.7 million Londoners renting privately. So I did look back in preparation for your question at what I promised in 2018 and 2019, including the original report from the think tank, and I was quite clear that the Red Commission would be set up once we knew what powers the government was devolving to us, and the idea was not just renters, you were clear about this during the campaign, landlords as well, developers, those with interest, to get together and draw up the right scheme for London. And we will set this up when we know what powers any government would devolve to us. My nervousness about setting up a rent commission now is the cost expense gone into this, but also we have not got the information. What's the rent in the properties across London? How many landlords are there? What's the quality of accommodation and so forth? And with a government giving us clarity on what powers they give us, we could then set up a rent commission to set up a bespoke scheme for London. London isn't Vienna or Paris or New York. London is London, and that's why we need a bespoke scheme for London. And you were quite clear, and I agree with you, about the importance of working collaboratively on doing so.
I think having a rent commission now would allow you to get that evidence and bring that together to look at what the market needs, to look at the average rents and to develop that model. So as soon as you get the powers, you can bring in those rent controls. And I was quite clear that I wouldn't have landlords in the commission. They need to be given evidence but not part of the commission. So I really think that we could get a group of people together now to start building that model. So as soon as the powers come down, we're ready to go. So will you set up a rent commission?
No, I can't commit to that. What I'm not willing to do is to set up a commission that may just be a waste of time, because we're not sure what powers will be given to us. It's really important for us to do a piece of work that helps those people renting privately who are suffering, badly at the moment.
I'm disappointed to hear that the Rent Commission won't come together and we won't be able to hear from Londoners about the model that's needed. Earlier you mentioned your Rent Commission rent control homes. Obviously 6,000 is a drop in the ocean for the 2.7 to 3 million Londoners, but I wondered when those will be delivered.
They were delivered in this mayoral term. The reason why they're important, just to be clear, is because they'll show you can have rent control homes that work and don't cause a real problem with the market. When you look at some of the models around the world, they use sometimes year homes were built as a way of deciding which homes come within a rent control system and so forth. So, what I'm hoping is not just will these 6,000 homes lead to 6,000 families being rehoused at rents that they can afford in perpetuity, but also it gives reassurance to the market and to the government that rent controls don't lead to the skies collapsing.
Well, I hope that we can get a Rent Commission to pay attention to those changes and they can look at the impact those rent controls have, because a Rent Commission would be an ideal place for that to happen. But thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's interesting what you were saying about not setting up a rent control commission until you have the necessary powers. But the other side of the private rental market is not just about the levels of rent. It's also been about the horrific levels of disrepair. and you have been very active, I think, in promoting the rogue landlord checker, working with local authorities, talking about obviously building these 6,000 rent control homes. Do you think there's anything more that we can do in the meantime before powers are properly devolved to address levels of disrepair in the private rental market?
Yeah, thanks for your question, and indeed thanks to Senator McGarvey for her questions as well. I think you raised a really important point. Look, there are a number of issues in relation to the private rental market. One is the rent they pay is far too high. Two is the quality of accommodation is far too poor, damp, mould, etc. Three is security of tenure or lack thereof. All three areas need addressing. Council homes addresses it to some extent. 6,000 new rent control homes will address to some extent, but there needs to be a change in legislation. In my view, that deals with all three things. But even if it deals just two, security of tenure, Section 21, quality of homes in relation to damp mould actions we have, really important. In the meantime, what I'll be doing is helping support financially renters' unions and those advising tenants about action they can take against bad landlords, using the powers that may be coming from Parliament in relation to helping tenants take their case to the tribunals. You can claim back up to 2 years' worth of rent if you're successful. Working with councils to make sure we can have all of our councils as licensing authorities. At the moment, it's a very command and control system. You've got to apply to DLUC. The Minister approves whether a borough can have a licensing scheme. It's bureaucratic. We've asked the government to devolve that to us.
Very clunky, very clunky.
Yeah, so there are things we can do in the meantime just to reassure you we're going to carry on and do that, and we're going to do whatever we can within the realms of the law, but carry on lobbying the government for a change in the law as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next we have Assembly Member Baker, who will be asking a question about fairer, safer and greener transport.
Thanks for your question. Over the past 8 years, I'm proud to have delivered a fairer, greener and safer transport network, despite the funding challenges TfL has faced. This work has included expanding the ultra-low emission zone London-wide, opening the Elizabeth line, extending the Northern Line and London Overground, and delivering the Superloop, the network of 10 express bus routes circling the entire capital and quadrupling the cycling network. A fair transport network is affordable and accessible. That's why I introduced the Hopper Fare, froze TfL fares and piloted off-peak Friday travel. Since 2016, we've made a further 24 tube stations step-free and are working to make half of the tube network step-free by 2030. It was a quarter when I was first elected. Keeping London as safe has always been my top priority. I'm proud to work with TfL to deliver the Vision Zero action plan and introduce the Direct Vision standard, halving fatalities involving HGVs. CCTV helps make people feel safe while travelling. We already have CCTV at all 270 London Underground stations and on all trains on all but 3 lines. We'll extend this to the remaining lines over the next 4 years. I'll also work with trade unions and private hire vehicle industry to invest in CCTV to keep both drivers and their customers safe. We'll provide record investment to tackle violence against women and girls and deliver free legal support for victims. London has been a world leader in tackling the climate crisis. Last year, I made the difficult but necessary decision to expand the ULEZ London-wide, transforming the capital into the world's largest clean air zone of its kind. I'll build on this progress by working with TfL and partners to deliver 40,000 electric vehicle charging points, having already delivered over 19,000, one-third of the UK supply. We'll procure renewable energy to power the underground, make London's bus fleet fully zero emission by 2030, and deliver 40,000 new public bike parking spaces, working with boroughs to accelerate the rollout of the cycle network and school streets. And I look forward to continuing working with you to make London's transport network greener, safer and fairer over the next 4 years.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and that's a really impressive set of achievements and plans, and obviously earlier this month that Londoners backed those wholeheartedly. So what I'd like to ask about is, while we continue to make our transport system greener, we must continue to ensure that it remains fair for all Londoners and that they all feel comfortable and safe on our streets. With that in mind, I'd like to specifically ask about the recent bus stop bypass safety review, and it identified that there are 1/3 of the bus stop bypasses that have been installed very significantly from TfL's best practice from just a few years ago, and it did acknowledge that fear and anxiety among Londoners about using them, about some Londoners about using them, is a real thing, and the review is clear that these schemes must not exclude anyone from using the streets. So how will you ensure that this is has changed given how many of the bus stop bypasses that aren't compliant are on borough roads? How can you help make that happen?
Yeah, thanks for your question. The way you asked it as well, which is really important, getting the full context in. So just to remind colleagues, the TfL floating bus stop bypasses, follow proper guidance, including design, and we're confident they're safe. The issue is quite a few boroughs have bus stops, floating bus stops, that don't follow the design guidance, and there may be design issues which lead to challenges. And so TfL will be working with the various boroughs whose roads they are, who are responsible for these floating bus stops, to make sure they're in accordance with the guidance. That makes them more safe. But there are other issues raised by the review as well. Some cyclists, not cycling responsibly. Some of the pavement not being the right sort of pavement, and so forth. So in addition to improving those bus stops where the design is not up to scratch, there's also other pieces of work that's been recommended by the review that will be taken forward by TfL as well, because you're right. The concerns and fears visually impaired Londoners, for example, are genuine. We can't pretend them away. They're genuine. And so we've got to take action, not just to make our roads safer, but to make those people feel safer as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's the key point, to make sure that people feel safe if we're effectively creating shared space on our pavements for where cyclists and pedestrians are coming together. So yeah, I just wanted to briefly ask. I don't have very much time, but yes, the study identifies, as you've said, that to ensure that bypasses are safe and bus stops remains accessible, the cyclists have to give way to pedestrians crossing. How realistic is this, and how do you intend to make sure this happens?
I think the key thing we've got to get across to cyclists is, if they're using the road, you've got to follow the highway code. Right. Yeah. There can't be one rule for cyclists, one rule for other people as well. And the role of education is really important, and enforcement, frankly speaking. And we'll be speaking to the Met Police Service, other partners, to make sure they understand this enforcement is important, because if cyclists who are breaking the law know they could be caught and they'll get in trouble, that leads to changed behaviours. So it's really important.
Yeah, thanks very much. Back to you, Chair.
The next question comes from Assembly Member Desai and concerns priorities for policing.
Thanks for your question. My vision is for a fairer, safer, greener, more prosperous London, and keeping London safe has been and will continue to be my top priority as Mayor. Over the next 4 years, we'll do everything we can to ensure London is a byword for opportunity, and safe communities are vital to achieving this. Central to this is my commitment to reform the Met Police Service, making it the trusted, effective and efficient service Londoners deserve. Under new leadership, we're starting to see progress, but it's clear there's still much more to do to rebuild public trust and confidence and improve crime fighting. I'll continue to support and hold the Commissioner to account for these reforms through the London Policing Board. I've always believed the way to reduce crime is to be tough on crime and tough on the complex causes of crime. I've committed to put in an extra 500 neighbourhood police community support officers on London streets to help reduce antisocial behaviour and take weapons off our streets. The best way to reduce violence in the long term is to promote community involvement and put local people involved, including young Londoners, at the heart of designing community-led prevention projects. My £14.5 million investment into the expansion of the flagship Mayans programme is helping to fund local community leaders and groups in taking action to support young Londoners and prevent violent crime in their neighbourhoods. And with the renewed mandate I have from Londoners, work is already underway on developing my new police and crime plan. I'm more determined than ever to ensure that all Londoners get the opportunity to fulfil their potential, and the safety of those living in and visiting the capital is central to that ambition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, congratulations on being re-elected. Mr. Mayor, I was deeply concerned to hear that police services across the country have been advised to pause so-called, quote, non-priority arrests due to overcrowding of prisons. Do you share my worry that the government's mismanagement of the criminal justice system will compromise the safety of Londoners? Can you also confirm that the Metropolitan Police will not pause non-priority arrests?
Well, can I thank you for your really important question. And it's really just reminding ourselves how we've got to a position where the government is telling the police not to arrest people because their incompetence has led to prisons being so full they want to use police stations to lock people up that should be in prisons. There can be no better reason for voting this lot out than that. The NHS is on its knees, schools are crumbling, and prisons are full, leading to the police being told not to arrest non-priority people. The Commissioner is quite clear. He has refused that instruction from the Home Office. He refuses to follow that, and he will be ensuring that police officers in London arrest anyone who commits an arrestable offence.
Yeah, mind-boggling, but there we are. Thank you for the answer. Mr. Mayor, you already talked about the issue of knife crime and violent crime in your answer to my main question. But following last month's tragic attack in Hainault, this has brought the scourge of knife crime to the front of Londoners' minds. Is there anything more that you can say in terms of what you will be doing to address knife crime over the next 4 years?
It's really important we don't talk about the individual case, and I'm sure all of us will have our thoughts and prayers. Daniel and Joran's family, the funeral was on Friday just gone. A number of things in relation to the issue, not just of violent crime, but also addressing the issue of those who have mental ill health, those who are dangerous to Londoners and so forth. And what the Commission is working on is the way to triage the most dangerous Londoners, so huge police resources targeted towards them. He's got huge experience in relation to counter-terror work, to targeting those people who are the most danger to us in relation to being terrorists. And what he's doing is using the same model, using data analysis in relation to those who are the most prolific attackers against women, but also those who are the most potentially dangerous towards Londoners in terms of violence. I was out and about with James this week in Westminster, where you saw an example of the partnership working taking place between the police, local councils, businesses, local communities in relation to reducing robberies, because you'll be aware acquisitive crime has gone up across the country, robbery's gone up across the country, and often robberies committed using a knife. So it's really important we do whatever we can to reduce that stem across the country, including London.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I wish you, your team and the Metro Police well as you work to keep Londoners safe for the next 4 years. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns housing priorities in the name of Assembly Member Small Edwards.
Thank you for your question, and welcome to the Assembly. All Londoners deserve to have access to safe, decent and affordable housing. Despite major challenges, I'm proud of what we've achieved together in my first 2 terms. Working with housing associations and councils, we smashed the government's tough target to deliver 116,000 affordable homes through London's 2016-2023 Affordable Homes Programme. We'll continue this work through our 2023-2026 Affordable Homes Programme, despite major headwinds working against us. We'll also continue to deliver housing that meets the diverse housing needs of Londoners through programmes like our rough sleeping accommodation programme, which will help us to end rough sleeping in London by 2030. Supporting renters will continue to be a priority for me in my 3rd term. We'll build 6,000 new rent-controlled homes with rents linked to key worker incomes, 40,000 council homes by 2030. I'm proud that the 2021-2026 Affordable Homes Programme requires partners to meet high standards when building new homes. I'll continue to lobby the government, this one or the next one, to prioritise fire safety, and the GLA will continue to administer cladding remediation funds for Londoners. When I think of all we've achieved despite a hostile government, I'm hugely excited about the potential of what we could do working together with a government that backs us. I'm looking forward to working with them post-July the 4th.
Thank you very much to the Mayor for that welcome, and I want to congratulate him also on his re-election, including winning in my constituency of West Central, the first time a Labour mayoral candidate has done that. I also wanted to ask him how he will help secure the vital land needed in London to build those additional affordable and council homes.
Well, one of the things that you will know from your work as a councillor is often the frustration councils have is when it comes to land assembly. So the council may own a plot of land here, private developer owns a plot of land here. It could be TfL or DFT or the highways agencies as a plot of land here. One of the things we're working with this government and politicians who will form the next government, I hope, is how to make it easier to assemble land. It's really important because if a council is building on a small plot of land, economies of scale mean it's more expensive than if we could join the lands together, particularly if they're next to each other. So lots of work being done in relation to land assembly, including the potential use of compulsory purchase orders as well. Also how we can use better the brownfield sites, and that means make sure there's infrastructure to go to the brownfield site. You'll be well aware from your being a councillor the issue of Old Dock Common and the potential there is there. We think there's a huge potential in London for more homes to be built on brownfield sites, which is to do with land availability being released because of infrastructure investment. And one of the ways we get growth is by investing in infrastructure. So I'm looking forward to the progress we can make there as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And what steps are you taking to ensure that new private developments meet the 35% affordable homes target in their schemes?
Well, this threshold approach is working, the fast-track system. I've seen, in the last 8 years, we've seen a massive increase in not just the homes that have been started, the homes that are being completed, but the homes that are genuinely affordable, because we have this fast-track approach. So developers have certainty in relation to land they're using, that they'll get a fast-track plan of permission if they can guarantee 35% homes being genuinely affordable, and genuinely affordable rather than the dodgy definition we inherited. It works. What I suspect will happen is you'll see a new government using that sort of system across the country, because the new government are going to be builders rather than the blockers we've seen with this lot for the last 14 years.
Absolutely. Things can only get better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns rebuilding trust in politics, and it's from Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you for your question, and welcome again to the Assembly. Trust is fundamental to a functioning democracy. In my view, it's the responsibility of every politician to nurture trust and confidence in politics and our institutions of government, and I take this responsibility very seriously. To build trust with the public, politicians must demonstrate they not only understand, but can also meet and deliver against people's needs and concerns. Because when ordinary people feel worse off, when they see their public services deteriorate, or they see some politicians even break the law, as we did during the pandemic, it can come as no surprise that their trust in politics is profoundly shaken. My historic re-election for a third term was built on many things, including Londoners' trust in me to deliver on the agenda as set out in my manifesto. And this builds on my record re-election for a second term in 2021. I'm looking forward to working with members of the Assembly to make sure we can make progress. After 14 years of chaos and decline, we need to demonstrate to the British public that there is another way, one of stability that is truly focused on improving people's lives. In London, I'm ready to seize this moment of maximum opportunity and deliver the meaningful change Londoners want to see: wage growth, more police on our streets, investment in young people, NHS waiting lists shortened, and a government that invests in tackling the climate emergency rather than delaying action.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And may I congratulate you on your re-election. Obviously, it wasn't quite the result that I would have liked, but I think we're all Democrats here, and we all, as part of that, we recognise and accept and embrace the results of an election, and that counts for both the mayoralty and the Assembly. However, I don't think it was quite as ringing an endorsement as you suggest it might have been. I mean, you secured fewer votes than when you were originally elected. The turnout has been down in each of the elections that you've contested. It doesn't feel like a huge kind of ringing endorsement and sort of striking engagement in London's democratic process. And I think it's important that all politicians who are elected, we have to do what we say we're going to do, and as importantly, and perhaps even more importantly, not do what we explicitly say we're not going to do. I mean, I could talk about sort of rising crime, the concerns that people have in London about those issues, and the fact that now sort of safety concerns are the second only to affordability concerns in terms of why a lot of people are looking to leave London. Could talk about the kind of creative accounting that you portray when you're discussing your housing starts versus completions and so on. But of course, given the campaign that we just had, I have to talk about ULEZ. I have to mention ULEZ, and in particular, your assertion in 2021 that you wouldn't extend the zone to include the entirety of Greater London. When you made that commitment then, was it a mistake? Were you acting in bad faith, or did you just change your mind?
There's a lot to unpack in your question, if you don't mind me saying so. I'm not going to spend the time we've got to explain why the victory of May the 2nd was historic and was huge. I'll let others do that when we finish the meeting. But what I want to do, Alex, is to make sure I speak to those Londoners who didn't vote for me, and that includes the many that voted for your party. I want to be mayor for all Londoners. And I make this point: the decision to expand the ULEZ was a difficult one. It wasn't an easy one to make. The easiest thing to do was to kick the can down the road. It's the easiest thing to do. We've seen politicians do it on other issues again and again and again and again. But I genuinely think that none of us have put up with drinking dirty water. Why put up with breathing dirty here. And the argument you've made was made, you know, on a number of occasions, including in leaflets that were just lies, during the campaign in the weeks and months preceding May the 2nd. And London has rejected that assertion. So that should give you some confidence that Londoners want clean air. And I'm looking forward to working with Londoners, even those that didn't vote for me, to make more progress going forward.
Thank you. But given that you changed your mind during the previous term, can we trust you to not change your mind on paper mile and on changing the emission standards for ULEZ during this term?
I'm going to allow an answer.
Yeah, no, it's a really important issue. Can I give you that reassurance? You know, that not only will I not be bringing in paper mile as long as I'm mayor, but also the ULEZ criteria is not going to change whilst I'm mayor as well. And it's important you ask that question because, you know, people understandably were nervous because they received leaflets that were blatant lies. And London has rejected that deceit from the Conservatives.
Just to confirm, I did allow the member a little more time because it's your first time. Next time, I'll cut you off. Okay. Right. The next question is from Assembly Member Mahfouz, and it concerns health priorities.
Congratulations and welcome. At my declaration of office, I committed to making London the best city in the world to grow up in. That's why I'm putting children and young people at the heart of my health agenda on this item. Over the next 4 years, I'll do all I can to help young Londoners lead healthier, happier and more active lives. Under this government, young people's mental health is in crisis. Waiting lists are growing and young people can't get the help they need. Working with partners, we'll deliver a new Happier, Healthier Minds programme to support young people to access mental health support in schools. Far too many young Londoners have poor diets, either because they're eating unhealthy foods or they're unfortunately not eating enough. As well as supporting struggling families to access food over the holidays, we're making universal free school meals permanent, helping to ensure our children have access to at least one healthy, nutritious meal every day. Ensuring children live, learn and play in green environments is one of the best ways we can help protect their health. That's why we'll invest in school air pollution filters, roll out more school streets and encourage more local authorities to deliver school super zones. Through my health inequality strategy and health in all policies approach, we'll continue my work with partners to help close the unfair gap that exists between London's healthiest and unhealthiest. It's simply not right that over 1 million Londoners are currently waiting for treatment in the NHS. Through the London Health Board, I'll continue to press for change in a health and care system Londoners so desperately need.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and congratulations on your re-election for a historic third term across Ealing and Hillingdon. So I want to focus on Hillingdon and talk through a scenario. So there is a scenario where 2 boys are born yesterday at Hillingdon Hospital maternity wing. Today they'll be going home, one to Ickenham, the other to neighbouring Harefield. On current predictions, one will have an extra 6 years of life compared to the other. Compare that to other parts of London, and that baby going home to Harefield will have 12 years less life than other children going home from their maternity hospitals today. I'm sure you'll agree with me, that simply isn't fair. So as part of your pledge to make London the greatest city in the world to grow up in, can you let us know what you'll be doing to reduce such health inequalities?
Well, thank you for that stark illustration of the inequality that still exists in the greatest city in the world. And it's really important we understand the postcode lottery that exists in our great city. So a number of the policies that we have, we've been using in the last 8 years is to address those health inequalities that you talk about. You know, one of the reasons why, you know, I've talked about, giving support to mums who leave maternity wards through a baby bank is because you know it starts at birth, at inception. We're going to be giving those mums the support they need. That extends to healthy schools and the universal free school meals offer we've talked about and it's been rehearsed and that some members on this Assembly voted against being made permanent. That goes towards making sure that, you know, our schools have good facilities after they've closed, after school clubs, summer schemes, mentoring, really important in relation to life chances. You'll also be aware holiday hunger is an issue. We're going to carry on supporting those providers of food to children and families during the holidays as Well, the big prize for us is to make sure those families do a hard day's work get a decent day's pay. I'm really proud we've managed to massively increase those employers paid the London living wage, increase the London living wage by 40%. We're going to make sure every Londoner receives a decent London living wage going forward. I want London to be a living wage city, which is really, really important. Air quality is a factor as well in all parts of our city. In outer London, more premature deaths than in central and inner London as well. You'll know this starkly from your constituency as well. So a number of issues we'll be working on. The great potential news, though, is after July the 4th, we could have a government that's on our side and working with us to address these issues, which should be transformative for London and for those two families you talked about as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, sticking with young people's health, and you talked about earlier mental health, I was speaking to a young teenager earlier this week who is going through their exam period in my constituency. They were telling me about the impact of COVID on their mental health, and we've got that replicated right across London. Could you tell us a bit more about how your policies during this term will improve provision and access to much needed mental health support for young people?
I had a conversation recently with a mental health expert, and she made the point that we aren't fully aware yet of the consequences of the pandemic to our young people. We may not know for some time what impact that's had in relation to the socialisation, lack thereof, and other issues that it affects young people with. And we've got to be cognizant of that. Not every young person with mental ill health needs to be medicalised, but there are things we can do to make sure they receive the support they need. But also we do know some young people who do require medical assistance are waiting too long for the treatment they receive. So the two big pieces of things we can be doing is, firstly, we're going to be launching almost £1 million to pilot those secondary schools in the most deprived parts of our city to give them support for the well-being of their students. That would include mental health, first aid training for staff, school counselling services, anti-bullying initiatives, and social skills training relevant to the young person you spoke to. And the second big announcement is to ensure that 250,000 young people are given positive things to do outside of school hours, after school, weekends and holidays. It's so important in relation to the development of young people. It transformed my life, having a decent youth club, sports facilities and so forth, and too many young Londoners are missing out, so we're going to invest in young people that way as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and it's great to know that young people will have the best start in life under your mayoralty.
Thank you. We next go to a question regarding the Green Belt from Assembly Member Georgiou.
Thank you for the question and welcome to the Assembly. Looking forward to working with you over the next 4 years. London's Green Belt is as important today as it has always been. And my London plan clearly sets out policies to protect it and maintain the benefits it provides to London. Almost all of London's housing is being built on brownfield sites, and I remain committed to a brownfield first approach. London leads the way nationally in its approach to recycling land, renewing its neighbourhoods, bringing forward new homes and optimising the use of land, especially where there is good access to public transport and local services. My good growth principles set out in the London plan underpin this approach, and they inform any options I take to increase housing supply. I understand the intention of a potential Labour government is to look at the grey belt, brownfield sites in the green belt. I haven't seen the detail of what this approach would involve, and we would work to understand what this would mean for London if and when that happens. London is facing a climate and ecological crisis, and its green belt, specifically its green infrastructure, plays an important role in helping London mitigate and adapt to the impacts of the climate and ecological emergency. The Greenbelt also provides vital access to nature for Londoners, recreational opportunities that support public health and well-being, and land for food production. We must look at strengthening these functions and improving the quality of green infrastructure in the Greenbelt. We shouldn't let the debate on Greenbelt distract us from the core task of delivering the housing Londoners need, which is one of my top priorities in my third term. Whilst I will not hesitate to use my influence and powers where boroughs are falling behind and blocking the development of the new homes Londoners need, we need to acknowledge that the problem is not about Greenbelt or other planning restrictions. London has a pipeline of residential permissions equivalent to 7 years' supply that are not currently getting built out because of the uncertainty and prevailing economic conditions. The interventions needed to unlock this pipeline include infrastructure investment and greater flexibility for the Affordable Homes programme. That's why working with the government, we need to do everything we can to ensure that homes are approved and built to help us tackle the housing crisis head on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I don't think it's been said yet, Mayor, I wish your family well over the next 4 years. As a father and a husband, I appreciate that it can be difficult on families' elections, so I wish them well. The Labour Party nationally has recently downgraded its support for the Green Belt with a new policy of building on grey sites, as you've mentioned. Labour councils have also been soft on the Green Belt, including Enfield Council, that proposes thousands of new homes on Green Belt sites in its draft local plan. Can you confirm that you will protect the Green Belt during your term?
I'm not sure about the details of the plans you referred to. What I do in the past, we've expressed concerns, including with Enfield, I think, in relation to general conformity. So it's just to reassure you, a number of councils have got a list of like 12, have been in touch with us about their respective local plans and so forth. And I can reassure you that the GLA will make sure in the response we abide by our views in the London plan, which is still my views in relation to the Green Belt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although it's unexpected, I'm reassured with that answer. If Greenbelt land is de-designated in a local plan, and I appreciate you're not on top of all the details with every single local plan that goes on across London, will you continue to treat it as Greenbelt in your planning decisions? And before you answer, I may just say I appreciate you cannot predetermine, but as a general principle, will you maintain it as Greenbelt?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking in general terms, because I just don't know, I don't know prejudice in a particular case either. So in general terms, there are exceptional circumstances for, you know this, for de-designation. And they're exceptional. I mean, literally, they're exceptional. And so we've got to look into each case on its merits. There are examples, and I've seen them, I'm sure you have, and that's what was referred to in the Grey Bill of, I don't know, I'll give you an example, that's a real example from years back, a car wash that was in Greenbelt, but clearly isn't Greenbelt or a car park. So it's got to be a case-by-case basis, but it's a slippery slope, and that's what I think you're alluding to in the tenor of your question. And that's why I was quite clear in my answer, which I thought very carefully about when I was drafting it, about I think it is important, and I think we've got to protect it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure you can appreciate, as someone who is from Enfield, as Bexley, Bromley and other parts of London have significant amounts of Greenbelt, that we do want to protect and prevent urban sprawl. I would hope that in the future, over your next term, we don't get into this debate over Grey Belt, Brownfield and Greenbelt and mixing them up as the same equivalent, which you haven't done in your response, and I hope you continue not to do over the next 4 years.
Can I give you that the reassurance, particularly because there is sufficient brownfield site for us to build the homes for the foreseeable future.
Assembly Member McCartney, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as the member for Enfield, can I thank you for your answer? And I've responded to a recent consultation along those lines too. But I think we need to also acknowledge that the reason why a lot of councils are pushing the boundaries on this is because we are in a housing crisis. And Enfield, for example, has one of the worst housing crises in London. We've got one of the highest numbers of no-fault evictions. Nearly 2,000 have presented themselves to the council since 2019, when this government promised to ban Section 21 no-fault evictions. And they are spending over £500,000 each month on temporary accommodation, which is often unsuitable and is not necessarily local. And that's largely, again, down to this council's failure to do what this government's failure to do what it said it would do, and that was to ban Section 21. Can I ask, is that something that you're talking about to the hopefully next government, and that you would expect rapid action on?
Chair, I think just for clarity, I can't talk about individual cases. So I'm not going to talk about Enfield in my answer. If that's
no,
okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, sure,
this is a general point.
I'll talk in general terms. Look, one of the reasons why many of us welcomed Michael Gove and the government responding to our lobby in relation to Section 21 no-fault eviction was because we were meeting constituents who had been evicted simply because they'd raised the issue of damping their property, or because they were asking, why have you raised my rent by so much, and they were given a eviction notice from their landlord using Section 21, and it's wrong. And so we were really pleased our lobbying paid off when the government said, you know what, we're going to ban no-fault evictions. And there's been delay, watering down, and now we know a general election's been called. So look, whoever forms the next government, clearly I hope for obvious reasons, the Labour government, I'll be lobbying about the importance of getting rid of this straight away. because it is wrong, and that's leading to the temporary accommodation crisis that Enfield's having to deal with, and all boroughs across London, Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem having to deal with. A huge chunk of councils' budgets have been spent now on temporary accommodation. The homelessness crisis is getting worse, sofa surfing and so forth. Rough sleeping is getting worse as well, so it makes sense to build the genuinely affordable homes that we need. And so, of course, I understand the pressures that councils are facing and the needs to build more homes, and I'm hoping a new government will sort out the legislation in relation to the pipeline of people becoming homeless or temporary accommodation at the same time as investing in genuinely affordable homes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next question concerns amending the Mayor's transport strategy, and it's in the name of Assembly Member Hall.
Can I thank the Assembly Member for her question? Transport is a cornerstone of my vision for a fairer, greener and more prosperous city. It not only shapes our daily lives and determines how we get around London, it also creates new opportunities for Londoners and enhances the character of our city. My manifesto pledges to provide outer London with better connections. Building on the success of the Superloop bus network, I'll introduce a second Superloop and enable Londoners to move more easily from town centre to town centre, transport hubs and more. To further improve the outer London transport network, I'll explore which of the failing non-TfL national rail lines can be better run by TfL and make the case to an incoming government for control to be transferred to London. I'll push for the next generation of transport projects that London needs, including the Bakerloo Line Extension, West London Orbital and DLR to Thamesmead. These projects could unlock an additional 150,000 new homes and will be a huge economic boost for our city. I'll also continue to work to safeguard the Crossrail 2 route so that this much needed project can be brought to fruition in the future. To help Londoners move around the city more freely, I'll expand the step-free access programme to cover half of the underground network by 2030. It was a quarter when I was first elected, now it's a third. I'll develop new plans to cut bus waiting times, and I'll explore new approaches to improving the passenger experience, including by adding Wi-Fi and phone charging points to our buses. As the member will know, my manifesto also pledged to support people who need to drive in London. Working with TfL and London councils, I'll reduce disruption on our streets and extend the lane rental scheme to borough roads. Despite the torrent of misinformation seen during the election campaign, which London has rejected by a record margin on the 2nd of May, I want to be very clear again that I have ruled out introducing a paper mile charge for drivers or changing the criteria for ULEZ. Anyone who understands how transport policy works in London will know these commitments do not require any amendments to my transport strategy. The current Mayor's transport strategy provides the framework I need to deliver on all the pledges I've described, and I look forward to using what's already in the strategy to get on and drive this work forward without delay.
Thank you. On the 17th of November 2022, this Assembly held a special plenary at your instigation to consider amending the Mayor's transport strategy. The amendment stated that, and I quote, "The Mayor, through TfL and the boroughs, will seek to address the triple challenges of toxic air pollution, the climate emergency and traffic congestion through road user charging schemes, including by expanding the ultra-low emission zone London-wide. Other than expanding the ultra-low zone London-wide, which of course we all know previous to that you said you weren't going to do, what other new road user charging schemes did you have in mind in November 2022?
Well, they're not new. They're ones began by Boris Johnson, but the Silvertown Tunnel is the obvious one, and the Blackwall Tunnel, the two obvious ones that spring to mind.
That's all that springs to your mind, is it, for the road user charging?
Those are the two that spring to mind.
Okay, so in order to make it clear to Londoners that you have a genuine change of heart and we're not just including in a cynical pretense ahead of the election, will you be amending the Mayor's transport strategy to withdraw the threat of pay per mile using charging in London?
So I'm unclear where in the MTS that refers to pay per mile. I'm happy to be directed to the page.
Yeah, your transport scheme, I read it to you just now, I'm sure you were listening intently. It actually mentions road user charging. Everybody assumes, because, well, anybody that has read your books, I suppose that's not that many people, but in your book it talks about pay per mile.
Well, Chair, I can read the amendment in the MTS. It doesn't refer to pay per mile. This amendment stated that I address air pollution, the climate emergency, and traffic congestion through road user charging schemes, including by expanding the ULEZ London-wide, end quote. No reference at all to paper mile, and I've been quite clear in relation to paper mile. Amending the MTS would be a pointless distraction that's not needed, because we can do all the things that I've set out in the manifesto, the manifesto for which I received a record vote, without amending the MTS.
Yes, may I just say, you know what people say about men, that are obsessed with the size of their majority, but I'm sure we'll hear about that constantly today.
It's normally those that win.
Well, in the meantime, would you be prepared to put into your transport strategy that you will not bring in pay per mile? Because people don't trust you, see, they are concerned, because you said you weren't going to bring in the ULEZ expansion, as our new Assembly Member Wilson mentioned earlier. So they are very concerned that you will bring in pay per mile. I know that's something that would thrill the Greens to bits if you brought in pay per mile. Yep, they're nodding. Yep.
Well, let's be quite clear in the chronology. The reason Londoners were concerned was because the Tories put out leaflets that lied about this. They put out fake penalty notices that gave people the
it's
Chair,
in your book.
Chair, I mean,
it's in your book, Mr. Mayor.
Assembly Member,
I know you won't have read it, Chair.
Allow the Mayor to answer, please.
I think you'll find I'm the Mayor, so let me answer the question, Assembly Member Hall. It's quite clear. The reason why Londoners are concerned is because the Conservatives, during their campaign and before, put out misleading information that caused them to be concerned. And I'm really pleased Londoners on May the 2nd rejected that deceit and voted for a candidate that was quite explicit in saying during the campaign and in his manifesto there is no pay per mile going to be introduced as long as I'm mayor. It's not on the table, it's not on the radar. There is no need for a pointless distraction to amend the mayor's transport strategy. I've read it out, it doesn't refer to pay per mile.
Right, well, I'm glad you've confirmed you're not bringing in pay per mile, but if we're talking about misinformation and outrageous comments, then I really think you should be speaking to Wes Streeting, because what he put was simply outrageous. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, is that a question?
I doubt it. Assembly Member Prince, please.
Thank you. Congratulations on your election, Mr. Mayor. In your transport strategy, will you be adding to that a condition that all main trunk roads, or all roads within the M25, will have a maximum speed limit of 50 miles per hour? I read that somewhere that was muted.
It's news to me. I'm happy to go away and look into that. Often things are news to me. But no, there's no plans at all to amend the Mayor's transport strategy, no.
No, that's fine. No, thank you. Appreciate that.
Assembly Member Towell.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations to the Mayor on his re-election. In the list of priorities or projects he provided in the answer to Assembly Member Hall, he mentioned the DLR extension to Thames. He may be aware that Bexley Council, which are very supportive of this, would like that extension to run all the way to Belvedere to linking with the existing rail network. Would the Mayor or his Deputy for Transport be happy to meet with me and Bexley Council to discuss the feasibility of this?
Can I welcome you to the Assembly? I'm really looking forward to working with you over the next few years. I'm more than happy to arrange for the Deputy Mayor to meet with you and the Leader of the Council as well. You'll be aware of the difference it could make to your community, and I'm also well aware of the paucity of TfL services currently to your borough, so I'm really keen to do whatever we can to assist.
Assembly Member Duval, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, can you give us an insight in terms of the conversations with central government, both civil servants and political, where issues like LTNs, speed issues and pay for mile, of where the government has been sort of encouraging you to look at these issues and to include them in future policies issues? A Conservative government, their Conservative government.
So you'll be careful, you might be thrown out, because that may encourage people to vote Labour on July the 4th. But look, the Mayor's transport strategy that was just referred to, the key lines come from Boris Johnson's Mayor's transport strategy. He went on to become the Prime Minister. But also, I'm well aware, and it's been reported in the media on breaching confidences, that when the current Prime Minister was the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, he asked his officials to look into paper mile. And the main reason was because the Treasury are concerned as vehicle excise duty dries up, more and more people transition to electric vehicles. They need another way to fill the revenues that come from vehicle excise duty. The money for vehicle excise duty is used to maintain roads and so forth. We don't get much of it in London because it's sent around the country. And so the Treasury have done a huge amount of work in relation to pay per mile. Transport authorities across the country, not just TfL, have done a huge amount of work in relation to this as well. And I suspect I'm the only candidate who ran to be mayor who had in his manifesto a specific reassurance that paper mile is not coming in, and I can be quite clear about that. And I want to thank Mr. Member Wilson for asking the question today to give that additional reassurance, because I'm sure those who voted for you may also receive the Tory leaflets that went around over the last few weeks and months.
Thank you very much.
Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, I understand that there's been a change of leadership in Sutton Council, and one of the issues that in fact Assembly Member Garrett was talking about earlier, which was the problems with the trams, which also affects my constituency. I know there has been talk about a tram extension in South West London, and I wondered if that might now be something that might be more likely to be positively discussed, because I know that that has been difficult with the previous leader, and we haven't really got anywhere with TfL talking to Sutton about the tram extension in South West London. Is that a change to the transport strategy?
Well, I've been down to the world-leading cancer hospital in Sutton, but also Sutton has spoken to the previous leadership and Merton as well about the possibility of a extension to the tram, which I think is really exciting. The problem is the council in the past has not wanted to contribute towards this massive piece of infrastructure.
That's what I was sort of politely not saying.
Yeah, and so I'm more than happy to have those conversations with the new leadership in Sutton if they're mindful to do so. I'll task the Deputy Mayor to contact the new leadership in Sutton to see if there has been a change of heart. I think it'd be really exciting, not just for those who use the world-leading cancer treatment centre and the research.
Be a real game changer, and there must be some still available because there's been so much development in that area. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's have an adjournment for 10 minutes. Back here, 11:56. So, thank you. I'm just going to take questions slightly out of order, Mr. Mayor. The next question is from Assembly Member Hirani, and it concerns London's budget.
Thank you, Chair. The elections at the beginning of the month show very clearly how people across the country, not just in London, feel about 14 years of chaos and decline with our national government. For 14 long years, they've seen underinvestment in and mismanagement of their public services, from police funding to youth clubs, council housing to social care. Every service they rely on has been significantly cut. At the same time, economic chaos has led to economic stagnation, and average wages are still below what they were at the time of the financial crisis in 2007. What we saw in London on May the 2nd was a rejection of the ideas that have got us to this place, a rejection of division and decline too. It's no surprise that London rejected a candidate who celebrated Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget and who felt deep joy, that's a quote, about the ideology that sat behind it. It's no surprise because ordinary Londoners are still feeling the impact of that mini-budget, with many hundreds of pounds more paid each month on their mortgage because of it. That's one of the reasons why there was a swing to a sitting mayor of 8 years, I beg your pardon, in these elections. I was proud to spend time last week with progressive metro mayors across the country discussing our shared ambitions and plans to achieve economic and wage growth. And over the coming months, indeed the next 6 weeks, we have an opportunity to campaign then to rebuild our country after 14 years of chaos and decline, and once again reject the failings of this government.
Thank you, and congratulations on your return as the Mayor for all Londoners. I'm going to quote something that you said in an interview on the 1st of May, and I quote, "I'm not looking for Keir or Rachel to write me a blank cheque, but the possibility of them not putting obstacles in my way every day, as the current lot have, is in itself refreshing. The amount of energy you're having to spend dealing with Tory attacks, which are unnecessary and ridiculous, is unnecessary and ridiculous. At every stage possible, they've tried to do us down, whether it's cuts to the police, NHS, interfering with planning applications, affordable housing, and not taking London businesses with them on trade delegations. How dependent are your plans on having a government in place that doesn't waste useless energy and doing London down all the time?"
It's integral. This is not a particular point, because for the first few weeks I worked with David Cameron when he was Prime Minister, and I was the Mayor, working with him on a cross-party basis, because he understood, and so did George Osborne, the importance of our capital city firing all cylinders. And frankly speaking, it's gone downhill since then. I was this morning in touch with Rachel Reeves, somebody who will be a transformative Chancellor. Look, London businesses are crucial to the success of our city and our country. I don't understand why people think the best way to make our country more equal is to make London poorer. That's daft. And so I'm really looking forward to, as you've said, I'm in no way expecting a blank cheque in relation to the challenges the government will have cleaning up the mess left by the current lot, but what we'll have is a collegiate way of working, from police and ministers not doing media interviews, telling the police to do more stop and search. It's ridiculous when the police have got to rely upon evidence, to Secretary of State calling in planning applications for no other reason but because the Labour Mayor approved it. And so forth. So, you know, I think it will be transformative, and it'll mean that Londoners, even though they won't get everything that they want and deserve, will see politicians working together in the common interest. I think it's really exciting.
Thank you. It's a shame to see that this government is more interested in what people are wearing in terms of lanyards rather than the lives of Londoners. The Conservative candidate up against you had a £550 million black hole in her manifesto proposals. Can you confirm your approach to budgeting over the next 4 years and how you will be delivering on all your promises to Londoners?
Yeah, well, one of the things that surprised me, I thought when Devonish went there'd be less heckling, but it's not really. And you replace one with another 7. But I think what you saw earlier on was a failure to understand how budgets work in relation to budget setting every year. And I can promise, as far as my manifesto is concerned, all our promises are deliverable. We've set out which policies will need the support of a changing government, and which policies we can do ourselves. And Londoners know from the last 8 years, in relation to what we've achieved, costed and delivered, we'll do the same going forward over the next 4.
Thank you. One of the proposals that I'm super excited about is the Superloop 2. Can you outline when you believe these proposals will be out for consultation?
Well, you'll remember, because there were many people in this room who were cynical about Superloop and anti-Superloop, and we took on those doomsayers, and we've got a fantastic express network across our city. It's so successful. There's been an appetite for a second super loop, and so TfL, I met the Commissioner this week. They're already working on plans that involve engaging, consulting, working with boroughs who tend to know their communities better. And the idea is town centre to town centre, town centre to transport hubs, hospitals and so forth, to connect those parts of London who aren't yet connected with Superloop 1. And the advantage of these express buses is it doesn't take a huge amount of infrastructure investment or years of building, whether it's a tram, or whether it's a DLR extension, because buses are relatively easier to do. So the first phase has begun in relation to speaking to communities about where there's a demand for this. At the same time, we're speaking to bus operators in relation to getting these contracts ready if they need be and stuff. And so as soon as we can share plans, we'll do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we'll just go back one, Mr. Mayor. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Cooper concerning London's rivers.
Thank you, Chair. Can I use your question as an opportunity to thank Shirley Rodriguez for the excellent work she did as Deputy Mayor for Environment and Energy over the last 8 years. Shirley was responsible, and she worked with you closely, I know, for London's first comprehensive environment strategy, and she oversaw the implementation of our world-leading policies on air quality, carbon reduction, energy efficiency and rewilding. I know she'll bring the same passion and energy she brought to this role to whatever she does next, and I'm sure we all wish her well. Frankly, the current state of many of our rivers is appalling. Not one of London's rivers, not one, are rated as good anymore by the Environment Agency. The water utilities need to urgently get a hold of the situation, and we need tougher legislation from the government that forces water companies to act as a matter of urgency. When fully operational in 2025, Thames Tideway will help reduce major sewage overflows into the Thames, and the project provides the opportunity to explore sustainable drainage systems and using nature to clean nature. But we know there's more that needs to be done to tackle the remaining sources of pollution damaging health of London's rivers. I don't have the powers or resources to turn around the fortunes of London's rivers by myself, but our success on air quality and climate programmes shows that what can be achieved when a diverse group of companies, government agencies, campaigners and charities work together towards an ambitious goal. That's why I've made an ambitious commitment to pull together a plan to make our rivers and waterways clean enough to swim in within a decade. My ambition for swimmable rivers in London will start by exploring where the opportunities lie. There are, of course, both ecological and safety considerations, and tides, currents, restricted access and river traffic mean that not every stretch of river in London is practicable to be swum in. But by working in partnership, we'll look at what actions we can take to accelerate the cleaning of London's water bodies, restoring river health and water quality. In addition, we'll look at what are the quick wins along the way that could deliver the greatest improvements in river health now. This isn't just about the Thames, but about the Wandle, which we both know very well, the Lee, London's docks and wharfs, and other waterway locations. While this is ambitious, we know it's possible. I've already funded successful open water swimming locations, including at the Royal Docks, Western Reservoir and Beckenham Place Park, all of which have safe water quality regularly tested. Hope to see more options for outdoor swimming as the health of London's rivers and other water bodies improves over the next decade.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for that answer. You'll have noticed that in my question I made a reference to the boat race, which we also both know well because it starts at Putney. And this year there were specific warnings given that normally when the winning boat gets to the end, the cox is thrown in and everybody jumps in the river. Everyone was told not to do that, and of course I think that draws attention not just to your desire to see swimming in the river, but the fact that so many people do so many other sports on the river. There's paddlers, there's rowers. What can we do apart from supporting the work of Thames Tideway, which I have been a strong supporter of for since 2016 when I first arrived here? What more can we do to make the rivers cleaner so that people can enjoy sport on the river? And it's really important, I think, to get children who otherwise wouldn't think of participating in sport on the river involved, which is something that is starting to happen.
I think the reputational damage to our city was humongous, because the Oxford-Cambridge race is reported around the globe.
It's global, yeah.
And you'll see what the Oxford team said in relation to getting unwell in the lead up to the race, and their concerns about not being able to throw members of the teams in a fun way into the river. In fact, I saw that the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, has warned this week against paddling in rivers this summer. Just think about that. The Chief Medical Officer is saying we shouldn't be paddling in rivers, and he's asking parents not to because of a risk of infection. The bacteria that comes from the faeces, that comes from the sewers. This is the 5th or 6th richest city in the world. What an indictment of the last 14 years. I think it's not irreversible. I think it is reversible in relation to cleaning up our river. We've done it in the past. Look at the history of our great city from Bazalgette to the Thames tideway. But also you will know, because you've lobbied for this, whether it's beavers or reeds, how we can use nature in relation to cleaning up our river. And so you have worked with, I've not had the privilege, great campaigners across our city, from the Wandle to the Thames to the Lee, who are desperate to help in relation to this endeavour. We'll work with them, with the EA, with Ofwat, with Thames Water and others, to do what we can to make sure our rivers are cleaned up over the next period. And I'd remind you of this. When you and I embarked on this journey with Shirley in 2016, there were cynics who said we couldn't clean the air. And look at the progress made in the last 8 years. I want to make the same sort of transformation in our water as well going forward.
Yes, I remember a trip to Putney High Street, and you then went on across London wearing an air quality monitor and monitoring the filthy air across London. I'm really hoping that we don't have the same problem going forward with people with monitors getting into our rivers to measure the amount of filth in the rivers. It would be really nice to see that, not just for humans, but also for all of the wildlife in the rivers as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to mention London Rivers Week, which is coming up. I can't go past without mentioning all of the work that is done by so many groups out there. I hope you would agree with me that publicising London Rivers Week is something we should all be doing, and getting out there cleaning up the rivers.
It's a really good example of the appetite for Londoners to volunteer. These are good citizens who go about, they've got busy jobs, busy lives, families, and to do this great stuff, cleaning up our rivers, and it's really important to pay tribute to them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to seize that opportunity to give a shout out to Roading Rubbish, who do similar work around Barking and Dagenham. The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Clark, and it concerns the fire resilience and emergency planning priorities.
Thanks for your question. Keeping London safe is my #1 priority, and I want to commend the work of the emergency services, local authorities and other agencies who work tirelessly every day to serve and protect London. I'd also like to pay tribute to Baroness Fiona Twycross for her service to London over the past 12 years, first as a member of the London Assembly and then as an excellent Deputy Mayor for Fire and Resilience. She ably oversaw the transformation of the London Fire Brigade through difficult times, including the aftermath to the Grenfell Tower fire, as well as leading our response to the pandemic that impacted all of our lives so deeply. I know she'll carry forward her spirit of public service to her work in the House of Lords. The LFB's Community Risk Management Plan sets out the Brigade's priorities through to 2029, including continuing to achieve some of the fastest response times in the world, working with local communities to prevent fires, and preparing for emerging risks such as wildfires and flooding. I'll continue to support and hold the Commissioner to account as he delivers that plan. I'm pleased to have appointed Jules Pipe to the role of Deputy Mayor for Fire, and I know the Assembly will agree this vital portfolio remains in safe hands. The LFB has now completed all 29 recommendations from Phase 1 of the Grenfell Tower inquiry, the only organisation to have done so. When Phase 2 of the inquiry publishes its report, we will ensure the recommendations are effectively implemented. I'm pleased that the LFB's progress has been recognised by the HMICFRS, which took the LFB out of Engage early this year, but efforts to transform the brigade culture must continue. Fires from lithium-ion batteries in e-bikes and e-scooters, which you've lobbied about for some time, are the greatest emerging fire risk in London. I continue to call for the government to urgently bring forward new measures to prevent the sale of unsafe products and regulate online marketplaces. I've appointed my Chief of Staff, David Bellamy, as the new chair of the London Resilience Forum, which will ensure we maintain a strategic approach to the growing risks our capital faces.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I just also want to congratulate you on your historic third term and congratulate you on winning in Barnet and Camden, which was particularly special. Thank you for all you continue to do for London. And I share your sentiments about Fiona Twycross and hope to welcome Jules Pipe into that new role. While we're talking about lithium-ion batteries and wildfires in London, these two things are huge risks to our built environment, but they're also a risk to life. As an assembly and as London politicians, what more can we be doing right now? Because I know some of this does rest with government, rest with regulation around lithium-ion batteries, and clearly in the next 6 weeks we're not going to see anything. But what can we be doing in London to be sure that Londoners, are aware how risky it is to be leaving that dodgy e-bike in the hallway of an HMO, some things like that?
If you study the history of our great city, I think new threats and concerns emerge all the time. So the fact that we're not talking about lithium-ion fires caused by e-bikes and e-scooters would be unthinkable 10 years ago. And similarly, I can't think any firefighter who's joined the fire service 10, 15, 20 years ago is still serving or thought we'd see the wildfires we saw a couple of summers ago. So I think that a number of things I could ask colleagues here to do, and I certainly do, and ask MPs to do, is just think about what emerging threats are coming to make sure we're ready. When we first were elected, could we have imagined that we'd be told that the built environment isn't safe because you can't rely upon stay put for a variety of reasons that were uncovered during the Grenfell Tower fire? And that shows why it's really important for us to support our fire service in relation to addressing emerging threats. The fire service now has got to deal with flash flooding in London. Just think about that. They own dinghies. They've got to deal with the issue of having to go around our city in boats because roads have been flooded and all the rest of it and stuff, and have the right kit and support. So, we invest in the fire service much more than the Home Office thinks the fire service should get, because I've seen the importance of them having the right investment. And you have an important role, not just in relation to scrutiny, which is very important, but also ensuring that the London Fire Brigade is keeping abreast of developments and keeping ahead of the curve. And that means making sure we learn from other global cities. New York's ahead of us in relation to concerns around e-bike fires and so forth. You mentioned HMOs in relation to that. Are there things we can avoid in relation to mistakes being made from other cities, and the conversations and contacts you have with other leaders across the globe could help the LFB as well?
Thank you very much. I just want to say that following on from something Krupesh had said earlier, just how much leadership makes a difference, and I won't get thrown out of this meeting, but just to say that going into the third term, I'm really looking forward to that Superloop 2, the extension of the 210, and free school meals for all pupils across London, and to compliment you that you've taken real action on cleaning up our air and improving our planet. That takes bold leadership, and I want to thank you for that, and I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hall, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the Mayor and I rarely agree, as you might have noticed, but I would like to echo comments about Baroness Twycross. I actually worked with her on LFIPA before she came in as an Assembly member and then became Deputy Mayor for Fire. She worked tirelessly, especially during the pandemic, and worked cross-party. I have nothing but good words to say for Fiona Twycross. The loss she is to us here is a massive gain to the House of Lords, so I absolutely have nothing but good comments, and it's very sad for us that we've lost her. Thank you.
Chair, I'll make sure that Fiona sees Susan's comments as well, because I think it's really important what Susan has said, because that cross-party support for the job that she was doing is really appreciated, I know.
Assembly Member Prince, please.
Mr Mayor, I would also like to put on record my thanks to Fiona. As you well know, we have an issue in my constituency regarding Launders Lane, and she really grasped that, whilst others have just been putting it under the carpet. She really gripped it. So again, I'd like to add my thanks to her efforts.
Chair, I should say that she made me say nice things about Keith at previous meetings, so the feeling is mutual.
If we can now move on to the question in the name of Assembly Member Russell concerning global leadership on reducing traffic.
Thank you for your question. I'm committed to continuing our city's leadership in tackling the climate crisis. London has already taken world-leading action to clean up our air and grow our green economy. Over the next 4 years, I'll build this momentum and continue to lead the way in climate action, working towards our ambitious target of making London a net zero carbon city by 2030. Since I became mayor, we've achieved significant reductions in harmful emissions. London's carbon emissions have reduced by 19% since 2016. London now has the world's largest clean air zone of its kind. 95% of vehicles seen driving in London are now compliant with ULEZ emission standards, up from 39% in 2017. The ULEZ is having a measurable impact on people's travel choices. The London-wide expansion took place on the 29th of August 2023, and between June and October 23, the number of older, more polluting, non-compliant vehicles seen driving in London on an average day decreased by 77,000, a reduction of 45%. As part of the scrappage scheme, Londoners getting rid of their polluting vehicles can trade it in for a bus and tram pass for them and someone else living with them, and a whole range of other sustainable transport offers are also available, including discounts in cycle hire and car clubs. London now has the largest zero-emission bus fleet in Western Europe, and I've committed to all buses being zero-emission by 2030. More than half of London's black cabs are now zero-emission capable, and I've frozen TfL fares to ensure public transport remains as affordable and attractive as it can be as an alternative to private car use. The Superloop has added more than 6 million bus kilometres a year to Outer London's bus network, and we're now working on Superloop 2. We've quadrupled London's cycle network since 2016, and a quarter of Londoners now live within 400 metres of the strategic cycle network. We're going to increase this by 40% by 2030, and we'll install more than 40,000 new cycle parking spaces in high streets and in schools, stations and residential areas by 2030. This sustained effort to make the alternatives more appealing is having an impact. Between 2016 and 2022, motorised vehicles traffic in central London dropped by 19%, and the figure was even higher for the central London TfL road network at 27%.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, your transport strategy has a target for 80% of journeys to be made by walking, cycling and public transport by 2041, and you've, in your opening answer, you've given quite a lot of examples of work you're doing. Now, at the end of 2022, you had achieved just over 60%, 62.3% of journeys by walking, cycling and public transport. That still leaves you with a big chunk to achieve to get to 80%, and you know you need to do it 10 years sooner than the 2041 original target if you're going to meet your 2030 targets. Now, TfL's own business plan says that they don't have enough investment to meet any of these targets. So we asked you back in January about the gap in the TfL business plan, and you said that TfL was looking into it. So briefly, do you now have a plan to fill the gap so that you can get to the 80% of journeys by walking, cycling and public transport? And if not, do you know when you're going to share it?
Thanks for your question, for your assiduous lobbying of this very important issue. So just to remind you and colleagues, the pandemic had an impact because lots of people were nervous going on public transport and started driving their cars again, which led to a dip in relation to that figure, which was 64%. It's gone down to 62%, as you said, post-pandemic. The recovery means more and more people are now getting confident in using public transport again, which they'd lost confidence in because of the jam-packed nature of public transport. Anybody who uses the tubes or the Elizabeth line will know how busy they are, so I'm confident they'll go back. The short answer is no. We've not yet got the capital investment we need to make the transformative changes that are required to encourage people more to use public transport. This year, for the first time ever in TfL's history, we've got an operating budget surplus done by ourselves without any government support. We need support from the next government, whoever wins the election, in relation to capital investment to make sure we can invest sufficiently in public transport for it to be enticing people to use.
I like your very strong target that most journeys should be made by walking, cycling and public transport, but I'm not hearing that radical plan and actions that you need to reach that target for all Londoners. If you're going to hit 80%, And if we're going to answer the climate crisis, Londoners, especially children, older and disabled people, need much stronger action. I would have expected to hear you talking about building the safe crossings that are missing at many junctions, expanding the TfL cycle network London-wide, and bringing in new bus networks to give people real and convenient options, particularly in outer London. Now, you've said already to Assembly Member Hall that you're not going to update your transport strategy. Surely you need TfL to do the detailed planning for how transport investment will change so that you hit those 2030 targets. So will we see more detail, and if so, when?
Chair, I wish I brought my manifesto to send but I'll send a copy to her so she can see our plans and the detail which is set out in the manifesto. I thought my answer was long enough as it was, but next time I'll do a longer answer to set out some of the detail that you're asking for. But to give you an example of some of the stuff that we're doing, the Superloop 2. I mean, the Superloop 1 is leading to people not driving their cars and they're using the bus instead of driving their
That's
cars.
great, but we need Superloop 3, 4, 5. You know, you've got to have a plan, and given yesterday's news, you're not going to be able to blame the government for much longer either. Anyway, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Chair, I think the Green Party predicted the results of the next general election. That's, I think, in order.
Thank you. The next question concerns Hammersmith Bridge, and it's from Assembly Member Rob. Oh, I do apologise. I've done that 3 times this meeting, and I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Assembly Member George, you. Sorry.
Thank you,
Vice
Mr.
Chair, obviously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, there has been a war on the motorist, whether it be by the ULEZ expansion, low traffic neighbourhoods, or 20-mile-per-hour zones. Now, Mr. Mayor, you have already set out your agenda. It is in your manifesto, and you've said it repeatedly over the last 8 years. So this question is not a debate on your priorities. But do you understand that in outer London, we do need our cars for travel? The disabled need their cars. Parents on the school run need their cars, because not everyone lives within or under a mile to a primary or secondary school. Do you understand that the elderly also need their cars? So my question is, do you understand that in outer London there are a different set of priorities than for inner London, where the transport system is much better?
Well, I'm well aware that the Conservatives during the campaign tried to portray me as being anti-motorist, and that was a theory and a thesis rejected by Londoners on May the 2nd. I'm not anti-motorist. I'm in favour of cars driving where they can at 20 miles per hour rather than 30 miles per hour. Why? Because you're 5 times more likely to kill somebody or cause them serious injury driving at 30 miles per hour rather than 20 miles per hour. I'm in favour of more safe cycling. Why? Because it encourages people to cycle when they're currently scared to cycle because of nervousness about other vehicles, including HGVs and buses and so forth. So I'm proud we've increased 4-fold the amount of cycle lanes. It's not anti-motorist, it's encouraging safe cycling. I'm in favour of clean air, and that includes expanding the ULEZ. It's not anti-motorist, it's pro-clean air. But I also accept there are parts of London where public transport is less good. That's why, in addition to supporting those drivers by making sure we invest in our roads, I lobbied for the money that leaves London, £500 million on VED, to be used on road maintenance, which causes huge concern to drivers and their vehicles and maintenance. But also one of the reasons why I'm trying to improve public transport out of London, Superloop 1, Superloop 2, the DLR Extension we've discussed, and other infrastructure, is to give people alternatives. Because if there's no good alternative, we can't be surprised if people not unreasonably carry on using their cars. And by the way, everyone often has a good reason to use their cars. So we've got to recognise, people are going to carry on using cars because they're important. Whether it's for shopping, whether it's because you're older, whether it's because of childcare issues or whatever. And so nobody's saying ban the car or prohibit the use of a car. It's about recognising we've got to be encouraging others to use active travel, to walk and cycle as well, and to give people alternatives. And you can carry on as a Conservatives accusing me of being anti-motorist. The results are Londoners reject that and vote for me in record numbers.
Thank you. Assembly Member Duval.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too agree with you about the principle of reducing speed on our roads, but the blanket reduction of the 20 miles an hour does cause some problems in certain sections of roads. So when we come to review, will TfL set out clearly what the parameters of that review is? Because I'll give you an example on the South Circular in my part. I'm pretty fed up with seeing buses go past me when we're following a 20 miles an hour limit. I'm fed up with cyclists going past me, going on that, when the road isn't appropriate for that we can deal with safety in a different way. Now, that's not going against the view that you said about 20 miles an hour. It's about saying you cannot have a blanket imposition without some sort of review to see if it's appropriate or whether there are other ways that we can, you know, for people to go about their business safely.
That's one of the reasons why, you know, London isn't a 20 miles per hour zone. For that reason, because, you know, some roads it's appropriate, some roads it isn't. I just remind colleagues, I know you know this, but 95% of roads aren't controlled by TfL. And so we work, but TfL works closely with boroughs, and TfL is always happy to review any of their policies in relation to things to do with road usage, particularly if there's certain policies that aren't working as well as they should.
Assembly Member Cooper, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to pick up some points that Assembly Member Georgiou was making, I know you've only been here for 3 weeks, but just to come back to the point that Assembly Member Russell started with, I was here when the Mayor's Transport Strategy was signed off by this Assembly in 2018, and it does say 80% of journeys by 2041 should be done by active travel or public transport. It doesn't say 100%, does it? Which does, I think, in my maths, leaves 20% of journeys that might always be done by some people, perhaps with disabilities, or other people who have a requirement sometimes to make a journey. So do you think it's an unfair characterisation, perhaps a misunderstanding of the mayoral transport strategy? I appreciate in 3 weeks Assembly Member Georgiou may not have read it yet, but he doesn't seem to be quite clear about its content.
Look, can I say, look, I drive. The idea that people who drive are the boogeyman is not coming from me. Right? But I do believe in clean air. I do believe in making it as safe as possible for people to cycle. I do believe that actually when you meet a bereaved mum or dad and they're telling you that their loved one may not have lost their lives, may not have lost their lives had the car been going slower, there's a responsibility to take action. You know, each year around 3,000 Londoners are either killed or seriously injured. Fatalities is north of 120 every year. And so I think we've got a responsibility to respond to those sorts of numbers. But you're spot on, Assemblyman Cooper. Nowhere does it say in any strategy we've published or anything I've said that people aren't allowed to drive. And it's really important for us to understand that when people receive literature that gives them the impression that the Labour candidate is anti-motorist, is anti-car, when the Conservative Party at their conference is talking about policies like, you know, 7 bins outside your house, or cars being banned, or characterising 15-minute cities in ways that they aren't. That leads to the public being scared, being nervous, being cynical. And I'm glad in London all that was rejected on May the 2nd.
Well, clearly, Mr Mayor, neither of us are fit to join the North London tofu-eating wokerati because we live in South London, but I hope that you've managed, by what you've just said, to nail some of the misunderstandings that seem to be rife amongst certain people. Thank you very much, Chair.
And if we could just go on the clock. Mr Mayor, could you, we've talked about 20-mile-per-hour zones and how they're creating some difficulties. Could you undertake for me to talk to the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association about the 20-mile-per-hour limit? And I know in theory it sounds like a good idea, but if these guys get a few points, they can lose their business. They can lose their means of putting bread on their table. And so I would ask you to renew contacts with the Licensed Taxi Drivers Association to listen to their concerns about the way in which 20-mile-per-hour zones limits are being rolled out.
Chair, can I thank you for your question, the way you asked it and stuff. That's a point raised with me as well on a number of occasions over the last few months, indeed a couple of years, which is people going just over the driving at 23 miles per hour in 2 miles per hour zone, getting 3 points in it, the cumulative effect in relation to that. I'm more than happy for TfL and the Deputy Mayor if need be to speak to colleagues who drive for a living, because often if you're a commercial driver, having points in your licence, or God forbid losing your licence, is obviously a real problem.
Thank you. Back off the clock now. The next question, unless I've missed yet another intervention and forgotten it, is in the name of Assembly Member Roberts, and it concerns Hammersmith Bridge.
Thank you for your question and welcome to the Assembly. Hammersmith Bridge is an important transport link, and I continue to do all I can to help those impacted by its closure to motorised traffic. I hope to see the bridge reopen traffic, including buses, as soon as possible. Alongside TfL, I'm supporting the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, which owns the bridge, with their plans to fully reopen Hammersmith Bridge, which requires government support. Hammersmith and Fulham estimates the full cost of the repairs to be £250 million. They submitted their business case to the Department for Transport a year ago, but have yet to receive a positive response. The funding case was expected to be agreed before Christmas and then in the new year, but neither expectation has been met. Until the DfT approves the business case, H&F cannot move forward with the procurement arrangements for the detailed design and build stages. To date, TfL has provided almost £3 million for the stabilisation works to make the bridge safe for pedestrians, cyclists and river users. The closure, of course, has had an impact on the local bus network, but extra services have already been introduced to bus route 533 and route 378 to help mitigate the impact of the disruption. The Hammersmith Bridge Task Force was previously convened by the DfT and chaired by the Minister for Transport. No minutes have been shared of meetings with TfL or Hammersmith and Fulham. It would be for the DfT to decide whether they wish to publish any notes they keep from the meetings. The task force met 16 times between 1st of October 2020 and 25th of November 2021. The Minister decided not to call further meetings. I'll continue working closely with TfL, the Borough and the DfT on fully reopening Hammersmith Bridge.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And also can I congratulate you on your third term, and also associate myself with the comments which you made about 20 mile an hour as one of the leaders of a London borough that was the first, well, among the first, to introduce a borough-wide 20 mile an hour. We have seen the positive impact that safer speeds on our roads can make. The reason why I'm pressing for further transparency for residents is that, as you rightly say, we have not seen a meeting of the task force since 2021 when Heidi Alexander was your Deputy Mayor for Transport, and the fact that we haven't seen this level of exposure of detail is causing problems for residents. So could I ask you yet again to press for, if there is to be a new task force established after the next election, that you will join me in asking for those minutes to be published, because the more transparency there is for residents, the greater the understanding of the problems and the greater the understanding of the extraordinary steps which will be needed to fix the bridge.
Look, can I welcome your comments and thank you for what you said at the outset. Chair, I'm happy to, in light of your question and your concerns, ask TfL to write to the DfT to publish the minutes of the previous meetings, but also to ensure, after the election, that if the task force is reset up, whatever for it takes, there is that transparency. And the simplest way to do it is publish the minutes, which is the official record of the meeting held. So I'm more than happy to do that, both in terms of present tense, but also future tense as well.
Thank you. I read in the Standard earlier this week that Rachel Reeves has promised, should there be a Labour government coming in, that she will work closely with you in order to get Hammersmith Bridge reopened. However, has failed to commit to the funding or any new money for the funding. Could you outline what you expect this additional assistance from Rachel Reeves and Lou Haig to be, given that there is to be no additional new money available?
Yeah, I mean, Chair, I've not seen the manifesto the Labour Party is going to publish. What I can reassure the member is, I suspect...
But you may have read the Evening Standard.
Always assiduously. I look at the journalists from the Standard in the gallery. I read nothing else, Noah. And so I'm more than happy to discuss this with the incoming Transport Secretary and Chancellor after July the 4th. I think that the point they understand, though, is that a lack of action is causing problems in relation to not just your community in Richmond, in Wandsworth, in Kingston, and north of the river as well. And we can't wish the bridge to be reopened. It needs financial backing. And I'll be making the point clear to the government, if it's a Labour government, the council can't afford to pay £250 million. They literally can't, nor can TfL. The only people that can is the government. And so I can reassure you the fact that it's the Labour government won't mean that I resign from making that point quite forcibly.
Thank you. And just touching on the rest of London's bridges, obviously we won't want to be seeing this sort of scenario playing out again. Do you believe it's now time for a fresh look to be given at bringing the ownership and management of all London bridges, apart from the ones with the City Bridges Trust, back within the control of the GLA?
I mean, I first became aware of the complexities of our bridges when Lord Toby Harris did a report around terrorism and safety review. I know many colleagues will have read the report. And when you realise the ownership of the bridge is in so many different hands, but also things like security, you know, the tragedy of the Westminster Bridge terror attack 2017. There was another one later on, of course, in 2019 in relation to London Bridge. The ownership doesn't belong to the GLA. Some are owned by different boroughs, and so I think there does need to be uniformity in relation to this issue, backed up by resources, by the way, as well. You can't simply, as happened in the past with the GLC, hand over an asset without the resources in another part of town, in Redbridge, for example, and there are big challenges with a bridge they can't afford to repair. So I think, generally speaking, infrastructure has been neglected, but I'd welcome, if resources follow the assets being responsible for the bridges.
Excellent. Thank you very much. No further, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll go on the clock now for my next question in my name, which concerns the ULEZ scrap vehicles to Ukraine.
Thank you. I'm committed to supporting Ukrainians in any way I can, and I'm proud to be working with the British Ukrainian Aid, BUA, to donate vehicles from the ULEZ Scrappage scheme to help those in need in Ukraine. This allows us to continue delivering a more sustainable future for London while providing support for Ukraine while it deals with the impacts of Russia's illegal invasion. Since the option to donate launched in March, 132 vehicles have been successfully donated to BUA, of which 67 have been delivered to Ukraine, with more on their way. These vehicles will provide important humanitarian support to Ukraine. There's still funding available in the scrappage scheme, and I encourage anyone still looking to apply to consider the option of donating their vehicle to Ukraine. I also encourage other cities to consider adapting their own scrappage schemes for this purpose. BUA is a trusted UK registered charity with a proven track record of delivering donated vehicles to Ukraine. While I'm eager to see as many vehicles as possible make it to Ukraine, BUA must follow a full and proper process to ensure that all vehicles are appropriate for donation. BUA must also ensure that any donations are made in compliance with charity law, which requires that donated vehicles can only be used for humanitarian and logistical purposes. Ensuring a vehicle is appropriate for donation involves identifying suitable recipients in Ukraine, working with charities and NGOs on the ground, assessing the suitability of the potential donation, providing the relevant documentation to the owners of the accepted vehicle so they can access their grant, awaiting the relevant DVLA documentation for the vehicle before transferring it to Ukraine, and reporting to TfL on the outcomes. The option for successful scrappage applicants to donate their vehicle to Ukraine is designed to supplement, not replace, existing volunteer activity across the UK to support Ukraine with vehicles for humanitarian aid. This is all part of the wider work we're doing as a city to provide support following the illegal invasion by Russia in February 2022, which has also included facilitating the donation of 50 decommissioned ambulances from the London Ambulance Service and vehicles from the London Fire Brigade. London stands shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainians, and I'll continue to offer assistance to those impacted by the conflict in whatever way I can.
So just to be clear on the figures, Mr. Mayor, 67 are now in Ukraine directly from the scrappage scheme.
That's correct, Chair.
And you talked about the option that Londoners have. Once a vehicle is scrapped, why does the person who's scrapping the vehicle need to take up that option?
So I don't follow.
Well, if a vehicle is scrapped under the scrappage scheme, would it not then be in the ownership of whoever scrapped it? Why does the Londoner particularly have to express an option to send that vehicle to Ukraine? They are surplus vehicles after that point.
I disagree with the government because the authorised scrapping merchant, if you want to call them that, obviously needs to get rid of the vehicle to the charity to get to Ukraine. Yeah. And so for the clarity to make sure the paperwork's done so the person donating their vehicle can receive the money. We need to obviously be sure that their vehicle's not going to end up in the streets of London or the UK.
Concerns have been expressed about the capacity that British Ukrainian Aid have to process the large number of vehicles. Would it not be a good idea to perhaps choose other organisations as well with a proven record of delivering aid to Ukraine? I'm not criticising British Ukrainian Aid. I'm just saying perhaps we can have more than one channel for delivering that, because, as I say, there has been some concerns about people who have delivered vehicles to Ukraine. The process is very slow and quite bureaucratic.
So British Ukrainian Aid and TfL will today, in fact, be hosting a session with other charities, volunteer groups and interested parties to look into issues such as the one you've raised, the vehicle donation scheme, its progress today, and to discuss opportunities for cooperation in relation to the scheme. I think maybe because of the concerns raised with you, they've organised that briefing session with these other groups, and I suspect some of those who've raised issues with you will be at the meeting later on today. But I'm more than happy after the meeting, if there are additional issues raised, to discuss that. The Ukrainian embassy themselves, it's really important to have their cooperation, and they are the people that recommended BUA. But let's wait and see what the meeting leads to today, but I'm hopeful that will lead to more confidence from other partners.
So am I, Mr. So back off the clock, and then Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you. As there's money left in the pot, would you reconsider your decision not to allow retrospective applications from people who got rid of their cars doing the right thing in order so they can benefit as well?
There's still 5% of cars seen driving on an average day that aren't compliant. We would encourage those to have vehicles that are compliant, and so the scheme is still open. Okay.
Retrospective applications?
No, we're not going to, because because there are lots of concerns in relation to in any piece of law, retrospective laws or schemes, in relation to people who applied for support. After the scheme or before the scheme benefiting. So we're quite clear when I announced this policy, whether central, inner or outer, what the scheme was at the time. How far back do we go? The Central London scheme being retrospective in relation to those who changed their vehicles when the T-charge came in 2017. The expansion from Central to inner when those in inner London change their vehicles because they drive into Central London. So we've looked into the possibility of doing so, but the complications far outweigh the benefits, as well as the money running out sooner rather than later.
And I gave you another 30 seconds as well, because it's a first time concession. The next question comes from Assembly Member McCartney and concerns planning priorities.
Thanks for your question. My top planning priority for this term is the review of the London Plan. My current plan, formally adopted in 2021, was groundbreaking in its approach to climate change, environmental protection, affordable housing and so much more. But a lot has happened since it was first drafted, and it's time to think about the next plan. Housing remains one of London's top priorities, and housing delivery will be the heart of my new London Plan. Over the past 2 years, officers have been engaging Londoners, communities, businesses and organisations through the Planning for London programme to identify issues that this review of the London Plan could consider. Over 7,500 participants have shared their priorities and vision for our city's future and how we might tackle the many challenges we face as a city. As part of this work, officers are preparing evidence such as the first digital housing capacity assessment and a housing market assessment to understand housing needs. Our emerging priorities for the next London Plan are tackling the housing crisis and supporting London's economic growth, continuing to lead the way in tackling climate change and air pollution, and building an inclusive, prosperous and resilient London. I'll also continue to prioritise using my planning powers to secure affordable housing and good growth through the strategic planning applications that are referred to me.
Thank you. It's good to see that a lot of work is already underway. But in your manifesto, you promised to build 40,000 new council homes by 2030. We've had a discussion today about the need to build more quickly on those brownfield sites to up our housing delivery. How do you see the planning system perhaps changes that may be in your new London Plan helping you to achieve that?
Yeah, so the good news is councils are in a better position now than they were previously in terms of capacity within councils to build council homes. You'll be aware that councils have been hollowed out. They simply didn't have the institutional memory in relation to council homes. Merton, for example, recently have started building their first council homes for generations, which shows the difference that we can provide in relation to capacity building, and they're giving funding for the council homes as well. The guidance is really important in relation to giving councils and other developers, housing associations and others, and private developers the opportunity to innovate when it comes to the conditions for delivery. Previously, a question was asked about land assembly. It's really important to support council in relation to assembly of land, and the planning guidance can be really helpful in relation to what we can do there. Supporting infrastructure is really important as well in relation to councils and housing developments as well. And so what the GLA team has done over the last couple of years is by listening to, I mentioned 7,500 participants, many of them are councils and developers, understand what the blockages or delays are, and what things we can do to make it easier for them to get these houses started and completed.
Thank you. And then what are the next steps with this next review of the London plan, or the next reiteration of the London plan?
Yeah, the key building blocks are the evidence base. The data is really important, because you'll be aware there's a public inquiry, it can be called in, and so forth. So the next phase of the programme will be getting away in the coming months. Officers will begin using the evidence base to begin work on the draft London plan. The key focus I've talked about going forward, and the really important thing that Jules did in the first London plan, which you'll carry on doing going forward, is making sure this is open and transparent as possible. We won't involve not just the developers, wherever they may be, public or private, but also ordinary Londoners and community activists as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
In order to extend Mayor's Questions Time meeting to deal with any business other, I would therefore, we need to extend the meeting formally for new members. Will the Assembly agree to suspend Standing Order 2.9b in order to allow for the remaining business on the agenda to be completed? Nobody's against. One day they'll vote against that. Be a surprise. The next question comes from Assembly Member Best, and it concerns Chingford Station second entrance.
Thanks for your question. The second entrance at Chingford Station was closed by Greater Anglia prior to the station being taken over by London Overground in 2015. The main reason for the closure of the entrance was for customer safety following an attack in the alley next to it. In addition to this, the second entrance had card validators rather than a gate line, and this resulted in increased fare evasion. I listened to requests from local residents to look into the possibility of opening a second entrance at Chingford Station, and asked TfL to conduct a review of what's needed and what could be delivered. TfL has now carried out a study on passenger numbers at Chingford Station, with analysis undertaken to assess gate line capacity. The study showed current capacity at Chingford Station is sufficient and does not justify opening a second entrance at present. The team used pre-pandemic journey volumes to measure demand. Current usage at the station is lower than pre-pandemic volumes. Some queuing may occur on the paid side at the height of the peak, but this is not a safety concern, as the station is a terminus, so there will not be high-speed train movements on the adjacent platform. Opening a second entrance would have a significant cost implication involving installing a new gate line, reviewing staff capacity of the station, and potentially introducing safety measures outside the new entrance. Given this and the fact that the current station layout is sufficient to safely accommodate passenger demand, there are currently no plans to open a second entrance. Maintaining one main exit London Overground means London Overground can provide adequate staffing where needed to ensure safety of passengers. Passenger levels, capacity and congestion are regularly monitored across the network, and I've asked TfL to keep Chingford Station under review as passenger numbers continue to recover and increase following the pandemic. Chingford Station benefits from an adjacent bus station served by a number of bus routes connecting customers to other nearby London Overground and Underground stations. Buses stop a short distance from the existing entrance, allowing customers easy access to the station, with staff on hand at all times during station opening hours. Secure cycle parking is also available at the front of the station next to the entrance. And I'll continue to work with TfL to make improvements to the transport network across London.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What is that significant cost of the second gate being reopened? What is that significant cost of the
I've
second?
not got the figure to hand back. I can drop you a note.
I don't know whether you can, because TfL have yet to tell me as well, and this is ongoing from November 2021. And it's really upsetting that we're at this stage where actually when your Deputy Mayor Seb Dance wrote to me in January of last year, things seemed really positive, and he did commit in his letter to me that there would be something that we could do at busier times. And at busier times, that would really be helpful. And I'm not sure, Mr Mayor, if you know the station yourself, but actually talking of passenger numbers, having just that one entrance is really unappealing when we have a second entrance that would open up on the other side almost of the town on the rail line, which would open up that access to the station to the more residential suburban entrance. And also having to cut through, the trains only run every 15 minutes. If someone misses a train, they'll find another way of getting on. And actually having that second entrance is going to get more people into the station.
Well, the inverted commas second entrance has been closed now for more than 10 years, as I understand it. And the main entrance is roughly 100 metres away, 150 metres away from the second entrance. I looked at the passenger numbers. To give you an idea of the difference between 2018-19 and the last year, 2.16 million in 2018-19, 2.2 million in 2019-20. We're still south of 1.7 million.
You're saying on basis of that, I'm saying at busier times it would be really helpful, and I'd like to know the significant cost. You can say it's a significant cost to open the entrance, but I think in order to say that you need to know the figure, which you don't today. Seb Dance also said that they would look at providing more additional lighting to improve safety. Is that something that's still ongoing?
Well, just to be clear, the reason why the TfL are recommending a second entrance isn't just a significant cost. There are other reasons I said it in my letter, in my question.
Can I come back to my question? So Seb Dance committed to looking at new and additional lighting. Is that still happening?
I want to correct the misunderstanding in the question, which is the main reason for Chingford Station second entrance not being open is not a significant cost. There are other reasons as well, which is in my answer, which I can write to the member about if she didn't hear the answer when I read it out.
So can you give me the answer to the question? Seb Dance committed to new and additional lighting to improve safety. Is that still ongoing?
The TfL have looked into what additional safeguards can be made to Chingford Station, including lighting. TfL are not currently recommending any problems with the lighting. If there are problems with any station in relation to lighting, TfL rectifies those. TfL have not recognised any problems with the lighting at Chingford Station.
Well, that's really disappointing, Mr Mayor, because you've identified yourself that you think the alleyway is dangerous, but now we're not committing to looking at even lighting in the area. To move on to a happier note, I'll be hoping to use Chingford Station to go and see Taylor Swift this summer, and I was happy to hear that you are yourself a Swiftie and we have some common ground. So I wondered, what is your favourite era?
Well, as an anti-hero, you'd appreciate that the era I like the best are Labour eras.
What's your favourite Taylor Swift era?
Well, listen, I think we're not going to shake it out today, but the key thing is to make sure
What's your favourite album, Mr Mayor?
The key thing is to make sure...
What's your favourite album? I'd like to know that it's your favourite when I'm listening to it.
As a Swiftie, you appreciate they're all my favourites.
I think you don't know. I think you don't know one, Mr Mayor, and I think you're trying to latch on to the Swiftie stardom to say you're a Swiftie. But I'd like to know an album.
I think you know the Tories are desperate when they think association with Taylor Swift will help them win elections. And the reality is,
I'm on to you, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
No other city in the world has as many Taylor Swift concerts as London.
Swift justice.
And we can't wait.
I keep thinking, Taylor who? And
If you're honest, Andrew.
I haven't a clue. I listened to one of her songs the other day. What a tripe. Anyway, sorry. Gallows, the next question is from Assembly Member Prince, and it concerns Gallows. Oh, I beg your pardon, Assembly Member McCartney. Oh, yeah.
Apologies. Can I just suggest, Mr. Mayor?
Chair, she's waiting a fortnight to ask the question.
Perhaps the answer to your favourite Taylor Swift album would be the album Red.
Another good reason for avoiding it.
And Chair, that's why she's the statutory deputy mayor.
Right. So we finished. There's points at which sometimes I just want to, my instinct is to say, Alexa, stop. Can we move on now to the next question in the name of Assembly Member Prince concerning Gallows Corner?
I'm pleased that the Department for Transport has confirmed the government's approval of TfL's outline business case for the essential renewal works required on the Gallows Corner flyover. Can I thank the member again for his ongoing support to secure this funding? It really did make a difference. I'm really grateful. As you'll be aware, the Gallows Corner flyover is a key asset requiring essential refurbishment due to its age and condition. TfL has previously indicated that without refurbishment, the flyover could be forced to close, which would cause significant disruption to the road network. The DfT's approval of TfL's outline business case secures a commitment from government to fund 85% of the estimated costs of the project. The remaining 15% will be funded by TfL, and I can confirm that this money has been set aside in the TfL business plan. Approval of the government funding is subject to TfL's submission of the full business case, which it plans to submit this autumn. TfL now has the authority to complete the negotiation of all the remaining legal and procurement processes with its contractors. Once full approval of the full business case has been granted by the DfT, TfL will enter into these contractual and legal commitments in order to undertake the works. TfL has already been progressing design and planning work at its own cost to ensure it can deliver the project as soon as possible, investing around £3.5 million so far. Detailed design work has commenced with its principal contractor Costain, and traffic management plans for the construction phase are expected to be finalised following discussions with key stakeholders in the coming months. TfL is hopeful that substantive works can start on site in March 2025, subject to approval of the full business case by the DfT. TfL is currently working with Costain to agree a works programme to determine how long the renewal works will take. TfL is also developing and assessing different traffic management mitigation options for when the work commences to inform discussions with key stakeholders. I'll ensure TfL continues to keep the member updated when it submits its full business case to the DfT and update him regularly as the project progresses, including on the project delivery timeline. Whilst I welcome the approval and support from the DfT to enable TfL to progress work on this vital scheme, I must emphasise the importance of having a long-term capital settlement to provide TfL with the assurances it needs to deliver other major renewals like this more widely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you for all you're doing on this and keeping an eye on it. Would it be possible to have a contact name at TfL rather than me having to keep bothering you all the time? In fact, it's quite surprising. I was with Ellie, Assemblymember Baker, yesterday, and we both agreed that something we do need to work cross-party on is getting a long-term financial settlement for TfL, because it is madness that we don't have at least a 3-year commitment on that.
Well, I can make sure that the member gets a contact for the Gallows Corner. I suspect, Sir Member Prince, that after July the 4th, suddenly this side will be demanding a long-term capital deal for TfL where they've been quiet as a mouse over the last 8 years. But that's politics, right?
Well, to be honest, I have called for it during my time as an Assembly member, and I can assure you I will be calling for it even louder after July the 4th. Yes.
Chair, the member's been assiduous in supporting me on a cross-party basis, including when it comes to vehicle excise duty being retained in London, working with me on a cross-party basis. I just wish you had more clout over your leadership.
Don't we all?
The next question is in the name of Assembly Member Turrell, and it concerns London bus data.
Thank you for your question, and again, welcome to the Assembly. London has a world-class public transport network, and a zero-emission bus fleet is setting the standard for other world cities to follow. In fact, TfL already publishes data on which London buses are electric, hydrogen, diesel or hybrid. TfL carries out an annual audit of its bus fleet, which is published on its website, detailing age, vehicle engine type, emission standard, vehicle body type, vehicle length and operator for the entire fleet. There's even a database for every single vehicle in the fleet. I've been rapidly expanding London's fleet of green buses, with the capital now boasting more than any city in Western Europe. And by 2030, we'll make the 100 London bus fleet zero emission, cleaning up London's air and helping the city move towards net zero carbon. There are now more than 1,400 zero-emission buses on London's roads. London has lower CO2 emissions per passenger kilometre compared to other global cities like New York and Paris. By delivering my target of a 100% zero-emission bus fleet by 2030, TfL will save an estimated 5.5 million tonnes of carbon. Zero-emission buses in London benefit the whole of the UK. New bus orders stimulate investment, create jobs with UK-based manufacturers and drive innovation, lowering costs for the rest of the UK bus industry. TfL is working with other authorities, sharing knowledge and expertise to deliver bus decarbonisation. Buses remain the quickest, easiest and cheapest way to shift trips made by cars to public transport. Buses carry up to 80 times the number of people as a car, make an efficient use of road space and cut emissions by reducing the number of private vehicles on our roads, which in turn frees up space for those who need to drive. That's why we're working to expand the bus network, particularly in outer London, where there aren't as many transport options. The Superloop has added more than 6 million bus kilometres a year to outer London's bus network, and TfL's aiming for another 7 million more bus kilometres a year across the next year. And we're now, as you've heard, working on Superloop too.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Residents in my constituency are concerned that they're seeing more and more diesel buses on their roads, and I recently put a Freedom of Information request into Transport for London to ask for the breakdown of the change in the number of diesel buses in my two boroughs over the last 8 years, and I was shocked, even more shocked given the answer you've just given, to get a response to that FOI to say that TfL did not hold the data, hence the question. So could the Mayor please provide me with a detail of how many diesel buses are currently in operation in Bexley and Bromley?
Yeah, I mean, the data I've got is for all of London, but I can ask the team to look into. It can't be difficult because the bus operators must know the buses in your patch. Can I take that away, Chair, and look into that?
Assembly Member Garrett, please.
Hello, just on the topic of buses and data, which we have spoken about before. So one bit of data that TfL do publish in a way that is quite hard to get hold of is people hospitalised, killed, and collisions involving London buses. And I asked you previously if you agreed with me that that information should really not just be hidden away, but be presented to the TfL board by the TfL Commissioner. It's important information in relation to your Vision Zero. Each quarter, each board meeting, how we're progressing on that, and the answer is we're not really progressing on it. And you agreed with me that you would raise that with the Commissioner because it was a good idea. What progress has been made on having that data put in front of the board?
I think your recollection of the conversation is not quite as...
I've got the transcript in front of me, as you'd expect me to have.
Why don't you read it out?
Because I've got 40 seconds, that's why not.
Well, the issue of safety is incredibly important to the Commissioner, to TfL and to me. The Commissioner is aware of colleagues not agreeing with the way he presents the Commissioner's report. There's two presentations of his report. One is in writing, that's published and available, and secondly is the oral report that supplements his written report. And I'll pass on again the comments made by the member.
Okay, sorry, there's only 10 seconds left. You're the chair of TfL. Why don't you present written data showing the progress against your Vision Zero? You could do that.
TfL publishes regularly the data in relation to bus safety, and they'll carry on publishing this data in the most transparent way of any bus authority in the country.
Mr. Mayor, the Conservative Group is now out of time, and regrettably, Assembly Member Garrett, you don't get the new member bonus. We've now covered the questions on the order paper, and congratulations to those new members who managed to get commitments from the Mayor. That's what the job is all about, to get those commitments. So, Mr. Mayor, you are now free to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask the Assembly to agree the motion which is set out on the agenda in my name, which is that the Assembly notes the answers to the questions asked? Can I ask the Assembly to agree to use the...
I think we'll return to this issue in June.
I think we're going to... Yeah, we were about to talk about the 6th of June meeting. I think possibly we might resolve that issue if we can offline. Date of next meeting, again, resolve offline. There is no urgent business requiring consideration, and so forth. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.